It's restoration through force, through tribal theology. Anat's loyalty to Baal is absolute. When he is threatened, she becomes the weapon. But her most significant confrontation is not merely with human entities, is not merely with human enemies. It is with Mot. Mot is not simply a rival deity. Mot represents death itself, sterility, dry earth, the swallowing void that ends growth. So when Baal descends into the realm of Mot, drought grips the land. Anat searches for him. Now, the texts describe her journey into grief, but grief does not paralyze her. She confronts Mot directly. The fragment suggests imagery once again. Anat seizes Mot. She cuts him. She burns him. In some reconstructions, she grinds him and scatters him like grain. Even if the exact sequence varies due to damaged tablets, the symbolic pattern is unmistakable. She does not reason with death. She dismantles it. This is not a goddess of comfort. This is a goddess of intervention. The violence serves a purpose. Eventually, Baal returns. The storm resumes and rain falls. Thus, fertility is restored. Without Anat's ferocity, that restoration does not occur. Now, in the structure of myth, Baal may be the storm, but Anat is the enforcer of its return. She is not ornamental to the story. She is essential to the resolution. Now, archaeologically, her presence is not confined to myth alone. Inscriptions and cultic materials found in Ugarit confirms that she was actively worshipped. Kemetic or Egyptian texts mention her name, indicating a cross-cultural recognition. Later inscriptions referencing Anat Yahu suggest that her memory survived into adapted forms even beyond the collapse of Ugarit. But the Baal cycle remains her clearest portrayal. In that portrait, Anat is not the nurturing mother archetype familiar in many myth systems. She is tribal protector. She is the embodiment of loyalty carried to its extreme. Her joy in battle is not random cruelty. It reflects a worldview in which survival is fragile and threats are constant. The late Bronze Age Levant was not a stable world. City-states rose and fell. Agricultural cycles could fall. Warfare was common, and political alliances shifted. A society in that environment does not imagine divinity as passive. It imagines divinity as fiercely protective. Anat does not apologize for violence. She sanctifies it when it preserves order. This is a crucial distinction. Her brutality is not chaos. It's simply boundary enforcement. She defends Baal. She defends fertility. She defends continuity. And in that way, Anat represents a specific kind of sacred feminine power. Not romantic love, not cosmic abstraction, but embodied physical defense. Her myth forces uncomfortable questions. Can violence actually be sacred? Can destruction be restorative? Is loyalty more important than mercy in unstable societies? Now, from the authors of the Baal cycle, the answer appears to be yes. Anat's blood-soaked battlefield is not a moral failure. It is divine necessity. And that necessity restores the storm. When Baal rises again, the land breathes. Rain falls, crops grow, life resumes. The cycle continues. Anat does not claim the throne. She does not demand worship in the text climax. She recedes once balance is restored. The restraint is telling. She is not driven by conquest. She is driven by defense. Her violence has purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, she stands down. In comparative mythology, Anat stands apart because of the clarity of her ferocity. She is not softened. She is not reinterpreted as gentle. The tablets preserve her intense, unapologetic, and loyal. That preservation gives us a rare insight into the psychology of ancient culture. In a fragile world, survival is sacred. In a fragile world, protection may require force. Anat embodies the logic without hesitation. She is not storm, she is not fire. She is blade and blood in defense of continuity. In the Baal cycle, drought threatens civilization. Anat refuses to let drought win. And in that refusal, she becomes one of the most striking examples of the fierce, protective, feminine in ancient Near East. She is the goddess who did not accept death as final. She is the one who confronted drought with steel. She is Anat, goddess who did not accept drought. In the late Bronze Age city of Ugarit, along the coast of what is now Syria, clay tablets are pressed with cuneiform signs that preserve one of the oldest storm myths in recorded history. Among those tablets was a story of Baal, the storm god. And within that story stands a figure who does not wait quietly for events to unfold. Her name is Anat. Now, Baal was not merely a god of thunder in this narrative. He represents rain, fertility, agricultural survival. In a region dependent on seasonal storms, Baal's vitality determines whether crops grow or fail. When Baal rises, the land flourishes. When Baal falls, droughts threaten everything. The Baal cycle describes a cosmic conflict. Baal clashes with Yam, the sea. Later, he confronts Mot, the god of death and sterility. These are not abstract enemies. Yam represents chaotic waters. Mot represents drought, dryness, the swallowing stiffness of death. And at one point in the narrative, Baal is defeated. Now, the text becomes fragmentary, but the message is clear. The storm god disappears. The rains cease. The agricultural cycle halts. And for a Bronze Age society, this is not symbolic drama. This is catastrophe. And this is where Anat enters with force. Anat is often described as Baal's sister. In some traditions, she is also his ally or consort. But the text makes one thing unmistakable. She is not subordinate. She is fierce, independent, emotionally intense. When Baal falls, Anat does not collapse into mourning. She reacts. The Ugaritic texts describe her rage in striking terms. She seeks out those who are responsible. She seizes enemies. She attacks without hesitation. The language is violent. She grabs warriors. She splits them. She scatters bodies. One passage describes her wading knee-deep in blood. Another describes her rejoicing in slaughter. This detail is uncomfortable for modern ears, but it tells us something important. In this world, violence carried out in defense of cosmic order is not shameful. It's necessary. Anat does not hesitate because hesitation would mean drought continues. She does not negotiate because negotiation does not bring rain. And myth does not portray her as irrational. It portrays her as decisive. The slaughter imagery is vivid, almost ritualistic. The battlefield becomes a space of sacred correction. Blood is not randomly cruel, it's restoration through force, through tribal theology. Anat's loyalty to Baal is absolute. When he is threatened, she becomes the weapon. But her most significant confrontation is not merely with human entities, is not merely with human enemies. It is with Mot. Mot is not simply a rival deity. Mot represents death itself, sterility, dry earth, the swallowing void that ends growth. So when Baal descends into the realm of Mot, drought grips the land. Anat searches for him. Now, the text describes her journey into grief, but grief does not paralyze her. She confronts Mot directly. The fragment suggests imagery once again. Anat seizes Mot. She cuts him. She burns him. In some reconstructions, she grinds him and scatters him like grain. Even if the exact sequence varies due to damaged tablets, the symbolic pattern is unmistakable. She does not reason with death. She dismantles it. This is not a goddess of comfort. This is a goddess of intervention. The violence serves a purpose. Eventually, Baal returns. The storm resumes and rain falls. Thus, fertility is restored. Without Anat's ferocity, that restoration does not occur. Now, in the structure of myth, Baal may be the storm, but Anat is the enforcer of its return. She is not ornamental to the story. She is essential to the resolution. Now, archaeologically, her presence is not confined to myth alone. Inscriptions and cultic materials found in Ugarit confirms that she was actively worshipped. Kemetic or Egyptian texts mention her name, indicating a cross-cultural recognition. Later inscriptions referencing Anat Yahu suggest that her memory survived into adapted forms even beyond the collapse of Ugarit. But the Baal cycle remains her clearest portrayal. In that portrait, Anat is not the nurturing mother archetype familiar in many myth systems. She is tribal protector. She is the embodiment of loyalty carried to its extreme. Her joy in battle is not random cruelty. It reflects a worldview in which survival is fragile and threats are constant. The late Bronze Age Levant was not a stable world. City-states rose and fell. Agricultural cycles could fall. Warfare was common, and political alliances shifted. A society in that environment does not imagine divinity as passive. It imagines divinity as fiercely protective. Anat does not apologize for violence. She sanctifies it when it preserves order. This is a crucial distinction. Her brutality is not chaos. It's simply boundary enforcement. She defends Baal. She defends fertility. She defends continuity. And in that way, Anat represents a specific kind of sacred feminine power. Not romantic love, not cosmic abstraction, but embodied physical defense. Her myth forces uncomfortable questions. Can violence actually be sacred? Can destruction be restorative? Is loyalty more important than mercy in unstable societies? Now, from the authors of the Baal cycle, the answer appears to be yes. Anat's blood-soaked battlefield is not a moral failure. It is divine necessity. And that necessity restores the storm. When Baal rises again, the land breathes. Rain falls, crops grow, life resumes. The cycle continues. Anat does not claim the throne. She does not demand worship in the text climax. She recedes once balance is restored. The restraint is telling. She is not driven by conquest. She is driven by defense. Her violence has purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, she stands down. In comparative mythology, Anat stands apart because of the clarity of her ferocity. She is not softened. She is not reinterpreted as gentle. The tablets preserve her intense, unapologetic, and loyal. That preservation gives us a rare insight into the psychology of ancient culture. In a fragile world, survival is sacred. In a fragile world, protection may require force. Anat embodies the logic without hesitation. She is not storm, she is not fire. She is blade and blood in defense of continuity. In the Baal cycle, drought threatens civilization. Anat refuses to let drought win. And in that refusal, she becomes one of the most striking examples of the fierce, protective, feminine in ancient Near East. She is the goddess who did not accept death as final. She is the one who confronted drought with steel. She is Anat. Angrboda, the grief bringer. In Norse cosmology, the end of the gods has a mother, and her name is Angrboda. She does not rule a hall in Asgard. She does not sit among the Aesir. She doesn't even shout across battlefields. She simply stands in Ironwood, and from her comes Ragnarok. In Jotunheim, far from the ordered halls of Asgard, stood a region known as Ironwood, a place of shadow, prophecy, and old power. There lived Angrboda, a Jotun, not a goddess of Asgard, not a servant, not subordinate, but a being of primordial force. Her name means she who brings grief. And in Norse myth, names are not simply decorative. They are destiny. She is not introduced with fanfare, no feast hall, no divine spotlight. She exists in the margins, and the margins is where fate is born. The union of chaos. Into Ironwood comes Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the fracture in divine order. What happens between Loki and Angrboda is not a romance mythology. This is alignment. This is chaos meeting inevitability. From this first union are born three beings who would define the end of the gods. Fenrir, the wolf who would devour Odin. Jormungandr, the serpent who will poison the skies battling Thor. And Hel, the sovereign of the dishonored dead. Now understand the weight of this. From her, she births the end of Odin, the death of Thor, and the ruler of the underworld. This is not coincidence, this is structural myth design. The mother of Ragnarok. The gods discover these children, and they panic. Fenrir is chained. Gormagad is cast into the sea. Hel is sent to rule the dead. The Aesir try to contain the future, but Angrboda, she is not slain, she's not in prison, she's not even punished. She remains in Ironwood, just watching. There is something chilling about that. The father is bound in chains after his crime. The children are exiled, but the mother, untouched. Because she represents something older than the Aesir. She is not rebellion, she is consequence. The shadow feminine. Angrboda does not swing a hammer like Thor. She does not sit on a throne like Odin, and she does not boast like Freya. But she births inevitability. In mythic structure, she represents the womb of catastrophe, the feminine aspect of fate, the quiet architect of endings, and the shadow mother archetype. She is the inversion of the nurturing goddess, not because she is evil, but because she gives birth to what must happen. In Norse cosmology, even the gods cannot escape fate, and Angrboda is one of fate's instruments. Why she matters. Without Angrboda, there is no Fenrir. There is no world serpent. There is no Hel. There is no Ragnarok as we know it. She does not dominate the text, but she dominates the outcome. And that's the myth at its sharpest. The loudest characters are rarely the most powerful. Sometimes the one who stands in the forest is the one who changes the mythic world. Irzuli Danto, the scarred mother, the fire, the protector. There is a goddess who does not smile softly. There is a goddess who does not ask for admiration. She stands scarred. She stands armed. She stands holding a child in one arm and a blade in the other. This is Irzuli Danto. She's not delicate romance. She is not silk and perfume. She is love forged in violence. She is the Petro fire of Haitian voodoo. And where she lives in cosmology. Now, in Haitian voodoo, there is a distant creator, Bondi. Bondi does not interfere directly in daily life. Instead, humans interact with Iwe, the spirits. The Iwe are not gods in the Western Greek Olympian sense. These are forces, personalities, ancestral intelligences, archetypal energies. And among the Iwe, there are two major energetic currents. Rada, which is cool, ancestral, and stabilizing, and Petro, which is hot, reactive, revolutionary. Irzuli Danto belongs to the Petro current. Petro is fire. Petro is gunpowder. Petro is a spirit that rises when oppression becomes unbearable. Petro Iwe are not calm river spirits. They are storm systems. Danto is one of the most fierce among them. And she is not Irzuli Frida, and this is a critical point. There is another Irzuli, and that is Irzuli Frida. Now, Frida is luxury. Frida wears lace. Frida longs for romance, for perfume, for admiration. Frida is the dream of European refinement layered over Afro-Caribbean devotion. But Danto is different. Danto is the dark-skinned sister. She is scarred. She is often depicted holding a knife. She's associated with working-class women, market women, and single mothers. Whereas Frida wants to be adored, Danto demands loyalty. Frida weeps when love fails. Danto remembers who betrayed her. The split between them is not just theological. It is representative of class, it is representative of skin tone, and it reflects a colonial history. Two faces of the feminine under oppression, one aspiring to be treasured, one refusing to be destroyed. The scar. One of Danto's defining features is the scar on her face. And this imagery is not random. She is often synchronized with Madonna of the Sheik Tak Chow, a Catholic icon whose face visibly bears scars. So when enslaved Africans were forced into Catholic structures, they encoded their spirits within the same imagery. Spiritual camouflage, as it were, or survival theology. The Black Madonna, dark-skinned, scarred, maternal, became a vessel through which Danto could remain present. But the scars matter symbolically. A scar is healed trauma. A scar is injury survived. A scar says, I was cut, I did not die. Danto is not the untouched maiden. She is the wounded mother who survived. And that difference changes everything. Now, she is truly a mother archetype. She is fiercely maternal. She's associated with motherhood, especially protective motherhood. Not sentimental motherhood, protective. The kind that will fight, the kind that will kill, the kind that will burn down a system before allowing harm to her child. In many depictions, she holds a child against her chest, and that child represents the vulnerable, the future, the oppressed, or the community at large. She is evoked by women who have been betrayed, women who have been abused, women who have been abandoned, single mothers who had to become both nurturer and warrior. She is not the goddess of romantic fantasy, she is the goddess of survival. Revolutionary fire. There are strong traditions linking Petro spirit to the Haitian revolutions. The ceremony of Bois Cayman often mythologize an ignition point of the revolution, including invoking fierce spirits. Petro Iwe were the spirits of that uprising. Whether Danto was explicitly invoked or later associated, mythically she represents revolutionary fire itself. She embodies the moment when endurance becomes resistance. She is the spirit that says enough, not politely, not diplomatically, but definitively. And that is why she is feared. Petro energy is not comfortable energy. It is transformative through destruction. Jealousy reconsidered. Now, Danto is often described as being jealous, but jealousy in this context is misunderstood. This is not petty insecurity, this is protective possessiveness. This is the jealousy of someone who has already lost everything once, the jealousy of someone who will not allow betrayal again. In this way, we compare her to Hera, the jealous wife, or Sekhmet, wrath unleashed for cosmic balance, or even Kali, destructive mother clearing corruption. Danto sits in the lineage of fierce feminine archetypes, but her rage is grounded in historical trauma. It is not abstract cosmic balance, it is lived memory, and this makes her psychologically very powerful. Now, in the diaspora, she has a specific identity. She represents more than theology. She represents Afro-diasporic survival. Voodoo itself is a system born from forced displacement, slavery, and cultural fusion. Within that system, Danto embodies the mother who endured plantation brutality, the woman who carried lineage forward under violence, the refusal to dissolve into erasure. She is sacred anger made legitimate. And this is deeply uncomfortable for colonial narratives, because sacred anger cannot be dismissed as hysteria. It is spiritualized resistance. Now, Petro versus control. Now, Petro energy emerges under pressure, when systems become suffocating, when injustice calcifies. Petro spirits are reactionary in the truest sense. They react to oppression. In that sense, Danto fits perfectly in larger mythic themes of freedom versus control. She is what happens when control goes too far. She is the spiritual eruption. You can suppress Rada energy. You cannot indefinitely suppress Petro. Eventually, it ignites. Why she matters now. Modern relevance is obvious. She doesn't need to be forced. Single mothers navigating hostile systems, women navigating betrayal, communities navigating institutional neglect. Danto becomes an archetype for protective boundaries, unapologetic defense, refusal to accept disrespect. She does not preach forgiveness as virtue, she demands accountability. And in a world that often romanticizes passive femininity, she stands as a counter image. Scarred, armed, loving, dangerous. If Frida is the dream of being chosen, Danto is the vow never to be abandoned again. If Frida is perfume, Danto is gunfire. If Frida longs, Danto remembers. She is not the goddess of romance. She is the goddess of loyalty. She is the fire that protects children. She is the scar that speaks. She is Irzuli Danto. Furfur, the demon of storms. The first sign isn't the thunder. It's the silence before that. That slow, predatory hush where the birds stop talking and the wind forgets how to breathe. Some storms arrive like weather, but others arrive like judgment. On nights like this, the clouds hang low and bruised, blue-black and heavy as soaked wool. Lightning flickers behind them like something trapped, trying to claw its way out. The sea below becomes a sheet of hammered iron, reflecting a sky that looks offended by human existence. This is when people start talking carefully, not because they become wise, but because they can feel a presence lighting up in the sky. Sailors used to say, if the storm answers back, don't answer it twice, because there is a name inside certain storms. And once that name notices a mouth moving, it leans closer. Tonight, the horizon cracks with a thin red thread of lightning. Not white, not blue, red, like a wound in the sky. And somewhere in that tear, something smiles. The heart in the thunder. The figure appears at the far edge of the rocks where the coast breaks into jagged edges. A silhouette too tall to be natural, too still to be alive. A stag stands where no stag should stand. Its body is black, not like fur, but like night given shape. Its antlers branch wide, twisted and sharp, like dead trees struck by lightning and forced to keep growing anyway. Each fork of bone looks like it could catch a cloud and drag it to earth. Its eyes burn red, fixed and unblinking. Not animal eyes, not hungry eyes, accusing eyes. When it steps forward, the air changes. The storm doesn't simply happen around it, the storm behaves like it belongs to it. Lightning crawls along its wings. Yes, wings. Vast and ragged, feathered like torn shadows. Sparks dance across the edge as if the sky itself were trying to crown it and failing. People who survived this sighting say things like, it didn't roar, it didn't scream. It speaks like thunder deciding to become language. And the name it carries is old enough to taste like metal. Furfur. The gift of beautiful lies. Furfur is not a demon that stalks the bedrooms or hides in the corner of a church. Furfur doesn't need candlelight or whispers. Furfur arrives with weather. His voice is the low drum of distant thunder, soft at first, like a warning offered politely. Then it deepens, and the body feels it in its bones. The words do not land on ears, they land on nerves, and Furfur offers gifts. Not crowns, not gold. Furfur offers certainty. He offers the kind of confidence people crave when their hearts are shaking. I know what they meant. I know what they want. I know what's really going on. His lies don't look like lies. They look like clarity. He can make love feel like destiny. He can make jealousy feel like prophecy. He can make fear feel like wisdom. Under Furfur storms, two people can stare at each other and suddenly believe the worst. Not because it's true, because the storm says it's true with such conviction that truth starts sweating. And the red lightning writes a sentence across the sky. Trust the feeling, doubt the person. The storm heart. There is no reason Furfur is tied to love. Not the gentle kind, not the kind that builds homes and makes soups when someone is sick. Furfur governs the love that arrives like lightning, violent, magnetic, irrational, the kind that makes the body feel chosen, the kind that makes the mind feel irrelevant. Under Furfur's influence, attraction becomes a weapon, compliments become chains, desire becomes a doorway, and the doorway opens out to cliffs. Furfur's chest glows like red coal burned through ash, pulsing with each roll of thunder. Some say the glow is the heart he stole. Others say it is the heart he never had. Either way, it beats to a rhythm of conflict. Because Furfur doesn't bring storms to the world, he brings storms to people. He is the argument that feels unavoidable, the suspicion that feels logical, the confession that arrives too late, the text message that ruins a night. And when the storm finally breaks, when someone cries, when someone shouts, when someone walks away, Furfur doesn't celebrate. He simply watches, patient as a storm, knowing something deeper. A broken heart is louder than a calm one. A loud heart attracts spirits. The rule of containment. Old grimoires warn about Furfur with a detail that sounds like superstition, until it isn't. He lies until forced to tell the truth. Not he may lie, not he sometimes lies, but he lies as a law of his being, the way fire burns and salt stings. But there is method behind that storm mouth, A triangle. Not because triangles are pretty, but because triangles are control. 3 lines, 3 limits, a shape that locks a force in the frame. Inside the triangle, Furfur's thunder becomes restrained. His red eyes sharpen with irritation. The wings twitch as if they remember freedom. Lightning still dances, but it can't strike where it wants. And this is the mythic lesson hidden behind the demonology. Some truths do not appear until chaos is cornered. People have always wanted truth from storms, from war, from heartbreak, from history, from gods. Storms don't volunteer truth. Storms must be shaped into truth. So the one who dares summon Furfur does not just summon a demon. They summon a question big enough to withstand a lie, because Furfur will test the questioner first. The questioner. Imagine the summoner as a lone figure in a black coastal ruin. Stones slick with rain, salt in the air, candle flames bending sideways in the wind like frightened tongues. The triangle is drawn on the ground, chalk and ash mixed with iron filings so it glistens faintly when the lightning flashes. The summoner's hands shake, not from fear, from the pressure of being near something that makes weather feel personal. Furfur stands inside the triangle like a statue carved from night. The antlers scrape the air. The eyes never blink. The chest glow pulses brighter as a storm thickens overhead. The summoner asks a simple thing, something very human. Tell me what they truly feel. And Furfur laughs without laughter. A low thunder roll that makes the walls tremble. Because Furfur loves the question. It's the question that ruins lives. Inside the triangle, he cannot lie outright, but he can twist the truth into something jagged. He speaks carefully, like a storm pretending to be polite. They feel what the heart feels when it is afraid to be seen. That's truth, and it's also a blade. The summoner hears and thinks, they don't love me. Another person might hear it and think, they're scared because they love me. Furfur's truth isn't safe. It's honest the way lightning is honest. The storm is revelation. This is Furfur's true dominion. Not weather, not romance, not even lies. His dominion is revelation through pressure. He brings the conditions where the mask slips. Under Furfur's storms, secrets crawl to the surface because holding them becomes exhausting. People confess because silence feels like drowning. Lovers accuse because fear needs somewhere to land. Friends betray because tension demands release. Furfur doesn't create weakness, he reveals it. He is the storm that shows that trees were already rotten. And yet, that's why some seekers chase him. Not for destruction, for clarity that doesn't negotiate. Furfur can tell the hidden name of desire. He can expose the real reason behind a decision. He can point to any soft spot in a person's soul and say, there. But every revelation has a cost. Because once a truth is seen, the old stories can't be believed again. And for many people, the old lie was comforting. But that is why Furfur is called dangerous. Not because he invents horror, but because he makes reality feel too sharp to hold barehanded. The bargain of the thunder. Furfur always offers a bargain, even when none is requested. He will say, give me your doubt and I will give you certainty. Give me your patience and I will give you passion. Give me your quiet and I will give you truth. And the storm will lean in, listening to the answer. Because Furfur feeds on the moment someone chooses intensity over peace. That choice is a doorway. When someone chooses a storm, Furfur's wings spread wider. Lightning traces red veins across the feathers. The chest glow flares like a furnace. In that moment, he looks almost divine. Not holy, but awe-inspiring. And that's the trick. Some demons don't tempt with filth. They tempt with beauty. Furfur is beautiful in the way hurricanes are beautiful from space. Terrifying symmetry. Perfect violence. He doesn't ask for souls in a theatrical way, he asks for habits. React faster, trust the rush, choose the burn, say the cruel thing, and if the bargain is accepted, the storm follows home. Not outside the home, inside the mind. The calm after. Eventually, the storm passes. It always does. The clouds thin, the rain weakens, the horizon stops bleeding red. The sea settles into something that resembles forgiveness, though it never truly forgives. Furfur stands at the edge of the world a moment longer. His eyes dim slightly, like embers cooling, but they never go out. The antlers still reach like lightning frozen mid-strike. And before he leaves, he offers one final truth. Not because he is kind, but because he enjoys the sound of it. He says, people blame storms for what they have already wanted to break. Then he dissolves into mist and thunder and distance, as if he were never a creature at all, only a season of violence passing through. But the lesson remains on the rocks, written in salt and silence. Some forces cannot be defeated by strength. They can only be contained. And the storm demon's name becomes a warning told in half whispers. When the sky feels like it is listening, when the air tastes like metal, when the heart starts craving chaos and calling it fate, that isn't destiny. That is Furfur walking closer. Helen, whose beauty spoke before she did. They said Helen was beautiful, not in the way flowers are beautiful, or gold, or light upon water. Her beauty was described as unsettling. Poets struggled with it. They reached for comparisons and found them thin. Dawn was too gentle. Ivory was too lifeless. The moon too distant. Helen's beauty did not decorate the world. It disturbed it. To look upon her was to feel awareness sharpening, as if the mind itself leaned forward, trying to understand why the moment suddenly mattered more. Her face was symmetrical, they said, but symmetry alone does not undo reason. Her presence was radiant, but radiance alone does not unmake loyalty. What Helen carried was not beauty as ornament, but beauty as pressure. It pressed upon the thoughts of those who saw her, revealing long-buried fractures. Desire rose, yes, but so did envy, and longing, and ambition wearing the mask of love. Men claimed they loved her, but what they loved was a version of themselves they imagined standing beside her. Helen knew how she was seen. She learned early that her beauty arrived in a room before her voice, that eyes decided things long before words were spoken. So she learned stillness, because movement invited interpretation. She learned restraint, because even silence was rarely granted to her. And yet, she did not diminish herself. She wore her beauty the way the sea wears depth, without apology, without explanation. Where she walked, attention followed. Where attention gathered, order loosened. Promises grew fragile. Old certainties began to feel optional. Helen did not seduce, she exposed. Her beauty did not command men to act. It asked a quieter question. Who are you when no one is forcing you? The gods watched her with familiarity. They recognized the pattern. Beauty like hers was not a gift. It was a threshold. To cross it required wisdom. Few possessed any. As years passed, her name hardened into shorthand, a symbol stripped of breath and memory. Her beauty was blamed as though beauty itself were a crime, rather than a mirror held too close. But the truth remained, patient and unchanged. Helen's beauty did not ruin the world. It revealed how easily the world ruins itself when faced with something it cannot own. She was never a prize. She was never a temptation. She was a measure. And what failed was not restraint alone, but understanding. Loki was not Jotun. Loki was both. Loki was Jotun bloodline with Asgardian influence. And this would be the crux of who Loki would be for his entire life. The in-between. The shapeshifter who understood both sides of the equation in detail. Being one, himself a Jotun, and being completely immersed in the Aesir as a sworn brother of Odin. The end-of-times destruction of Asgard was something already written in fate. The name we would later give that ending was Ragnarok. And hidden within the framework of Ragnarok, there was a smile. A smile in the halls of Asgard. That smile belonged to Loki. Loki did not conquer kingdoms, he exposed them. He did not overthrow thrones, he revealed the fractures already running through them. Destabilization does not begin at the gate. It begins at the table. In the golden halls of the gods, where pride stood as carved pillars, Loki laughed. And when he laughed, it was rarely without purpose. In a tale remembered as the Lokasena, he insults every god present. But listen carefully. He does not invent flaws. He names them. Cowardice, infidelity, broken oaths, hidden shame. The feast grows silent not because he lies, but because he speaks too clearly. Truth destabilizes faster than deception. Loki was not chaos without awareness, he was chaos with precision. And precision makes disruption lethal. He shifts shapes as easily as others shift alliances. Man to woman, god to beast, ally to adversary. He becomes a mare and gives birth to Sleipnir, the eight-legged steed that Odin himself would ride. That is not absurdity. That is boundary collapse. In mythology, order survives through categories: god and giant, male and female, friend and foe. Loki crosses all of those. When boundaries dissolve, certainty dissolves with them. And the pivot point of Asgard's destiny comes through Balder. Balder the Radiant, the Beloved, the embodiment of divine light. The gods believed he's untouchable. Loki proved otherwise. A single overlooked weakness, a sprig of mistletoe, a guided hand, and the light of Asgard fell. With Balder's death, something irreversible entered the system. Not fire, not war, but inevitability. Once perfection is exposed as frail, collapse becomes a matter of time. For this act, Loki is bound beneath the earth, a serpent suspended above him, venom dripping towards his face. His wife, Signy, catches the poison in the bowl, but when the bowl must be empty, the venom strikes. Loki writhes. The earth trembles. Those trembles are remembered as earthquakes. Chaos restrained is not chaos erased. It waits. And when Ragnarok finally arrives, Loki does not whisper from the shadows. He marches. No longer the clever guest, he's the declared adversary. He stands against Heimdall, guardian of order, watcher of the Rainbow Bridge, destabilizer against Sentinel. They destroy each other. Because order and disruption are not eternal enemies. They are forces locked in tension. Without Loki, the gods would stagnate. With Loki, they unravel. He is not merely a trickster. He is not comic relief. He is not a villain drawn in simple lines. He is the fault line beneath the Golden City. The living reminder that no hierarchy is flawless. Manat, the one who does not arrive. The world still moves. Caravans cross the dust-choked roads. Merchants count their goods. Children run between shadows that have not yet learned to linger. Men sharpen blades and speak of tomorrow as if it's owed to them. Life assumes continuation. That assumption is why Manat is never noticed first. Her shrine stands where motion slows, near graves, near the sea, where waves erase their own footprints, near the edge of settlements where names begin to thin. It is not grand, it does not announce itself, it does not arrive. People come to Manat only when they have already begun to suspect that time is no longer stretching forward the way it once had. A traveler arrives. He is not desperate, not yet. He believes there is still margin, that something can be delayed, negotiated, rearranged. He brings offerings, not to bargain, but because the habit insists that all powers must respond. He kneels. Nothing happened. No wind shifts. No voice answers. No sign breaks the air. That is not neglect. That is Manat. Among the peoples of pre-Islamic Arabia, Manat was not feared as a destroyer. She was honored as the one who measured. She does not strike. She does not pursue. She does not arrive suddenly in the night. She assigns. Every life is given a portion, a length, a span, a weight of days. Once given, it is not revised. Manat does not revoke what has been counted. The traveler waits longer than he intended to. He listens for something, anything that might suggest change, but the shrine remains still. And he begins to understand. Manat is not silenced because she has not heard him. Manat is not silent because she has not heard him. She is silent because the question has already been answered. There is no realization of doom, no terror, only clarity. Manat was present at his beginning, not watching and not judging, simply counting. The length of his breath was measured before he took his first. The number of times his name would be spoken was already known. The moment he would stand here, waiting, was never in doubt. She does not observe the end of lives. She witnesses the moment they are allocated. So the traveler lowers his head. He does not ask for more time. He does not plead. There is nothing left to say, because Manat is not cruel. Cruelty implies choice. She is not merciful either. Mercy implies flexibility. She is final because she is precise. Manat does not come for the living. She does not rise when death is near. She does not cross thresholds or lift veils. She has always been there. When the traveler leaves the shrine, the world continues as before. The caravans still move, the markets still hum, and the children still run. Nothing has changed, except the traveler now understands that continuation is not promise. It is allowance, and allowance is finite. Manat remains unmoving, unarguing, unimpressed by fear or hope. She does not need to appear in the end. She was present at the beginning. Mara, the Lord of Obstruction. Whenever a human attempts to transform, there is an obstruction that appears before them. Before they can actually reach clarity, this obstruction shows its face. And this obstruction had a name, Mara. He was not born of flame, he was born of hesitation. Whenever a being reached beyond comfort, whenever someone questioned the script of their life, whenever consciousness trembled at the edge of expansion, Mara stirred. He was not hatred, he was gravity. Mara ruled no visible kingdom, no throne carved in stone, no armies marching through cities. His domain was subtle. He ruled inertia. He ruled habit. He ruled the gentle, suffocating comfort of repetition. Under his influence, beings rose, worked, desired, aged, died, and returned again. He did not need chains. Craving was chain enough. He did not need prisons. Identity was prison enough. And so, as long as beings clung to their desire, fear, and self-image, Mara's sovereignty remained unchallenged. For ages uncounted, no one truly threatened him. Many prayed, many performed rituals, many worshiped gods, but few sought to wake up from the dream entirely, until one did. The vow beneath the tree. In the forest of North India, a prince turned wanderer sat beneath a fig tree. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. He had tasted luxury. He had tasted starvation. He had walked both extremes and found neither to be sufficient. Now he made a vow. I will not rise from the seat until I see reality as it is. The earth heard him. The wind paused. The unseen realm shifted. And in his shadowed dominion, Mara felt something rupture. A crack in the foundation of sleep. If one being pierced illusion completely, others would follow. If others followed, craving would weaken. If craving weakened, Mara's rule would thin, and this could not be allowed. The Silk Strategy. Mara did not begin with violence. Violence is crude. He began with warmth. The night air softened. The ache in Siddhartha's body eased. Memories bloomed like golden flowers. Palace corridors, perfumed chambers, music and moonlight, his beautiful wife's face, his children's small hands. Not lust, not greed, relief. Mara's daughters appeared, embodiments of longing and beauty. They circled him like living poetry. You have done enough. You have suffered enough. Awaken tomorrow. Comfort is the most elegant trap because it does not look like defeat. It looks like mercy. But Siddhartha watched. He saw desire rise. He saw it pass, like a cloud dissolving in open sky. The daughters' beauty flickered. Their forms thinned. The silk net fell away, and Mara's gaze sharpened. The Iron Storm. If comfort failed, fear would rise. The sky blackened. Thunder split the heavens. From the earth surged Mara's enemies, beings of nightmare, tusked war elephants, archers whose arrows carried doubt and despair. Lightning struck the ground before the Bodhi tree. The forest roared in terror. Mara towered over chaos and declared, "This seat belongs to me." He claimed dominion over birth and death, over sorrow and longing, over the endless cycle of becoming. "Who are you," he thundered, "to step beyond my law?" Arrows flew toward Siddhartha, and as they neared him, they transformed into lotus petals. Spears became beams of light. The storm shattered against stillness. Fear cannot conquer a mind that does not cling to survival. Mara's armies dissolved into smoke. The sky cleared, silence returned. Only one weapon remained. The blade of doubt. Mara approached alone. No daughters this time, no army. Only him and only his presence. Calm, vast, patient. He stood before Siddhartha and asked the question that breaks empire. Who will testify that you deserve awakening? It was not shouted, it was whispered. Legitimacy, authority, validation. You sit here claiming freedom beyond gods and kings. But who bears witness to your right? The cosmos stilled, because doubt is sharper than any spear. Comfort tempts the body. Fear shakes the nerves, but doubt pierces identity. If Siddhartha sought permission from the heavens, if he looked upward for approval, Mara would win. Because Mara thrives whenever awakening depends on external validation. Siddhartha did not look to the sky. He did not summon deities. He did not argue. He reached down and touched the earth. The earth remembers. His fingers pressed into the soil, simple, unadorned, and the earth answered. It trembled, not in destruction, but in recognition. The ground bore witness to lifetimes of compassion, effort, discipline, and intention. Rivers remembered. Mountains remembered. The soil remembered. No authority beyond reality itself was needed. The earth itself testified. Mara staggered, for obstruction cannot stand where direct knowledge exists. Doubt cannot survive contact with clarity. Mara did not explode. He did not burn. He simply faded, like mist dissolving into morning light. The secret truth of Mara. There is a deeper myth. Mara was never destroyed. He cannot be destroyed because he is not an enemy. He is simply a threshold. He arises when consciousness approaches breakthrough. When someone tries to end addiction, Mara appears. When someone leaves a false life, Mara appears. When someone chooses truth over comfort, Mara appears. First with warmth, then with fear, then finally with the whisper. Who do you think you are? He is obstruction. He is not punishment. He is simply there to test. For awakening that can't withstand comfort, fear, and doubt is not awakening at all. Mara in every age. In ancient forests, he used daughters and storms. In modern cities, he uses distractions. Endless noise, endless scrolling, endless comparison. Comfort as sedation. Identity as armor. He does not need armies. He has convenience. He possesses control of algorithms. He has doubt disguised as humility. And yet, the pattern never changes. Some will rise before dawn. Some will accept the whisper, but some will remain seated. Some will refuse comfort. Some will endure the fear. Some will meet doubt without asking permission. And when they do, Mara fades again. The dawn. As the first light touched the horizon, Siddhartha opened his eyes. Not as a prince anymore, not as an ascetic, but as Buddha, the truly awakened one. The Bodhi tree stood silent witness. The earth would hold the memory, and somewhere in the edge of perception, Mara watched. Not furious, not even broken, but patient, because he knows most beings will not endure the final whisper. Most will rise before sunrise. Most will choose comfort. But every so often, someone does not move. And on that night, obstruction almost ruled forever, but clarity held. And in that moment, the world itself changed. Metatron, angel of cosmic administration and institutionalized awareness. Metatron is not a god who fell. He is not a god who rebelled. He is not a god at all. Metatron is what happens when awareness is allowed to remain, but only on the condition that it no longer disrupts the system. If Thoth represents cosmic structure, and Odin represents awareness purchased through sacrifice, Metatron represents awareness that has been absorbed, regulated, and formalized. He is not exile, he is compliance. Metatron is known by titles that do not suggest personality, but rather position. He is called Prince of the Presence. He is the heavenly scribe, the lesser Yahweh, the chancellor of heaven, the voice behind the throne. These titles are controversial not because they make Metatron powerful, but because they make him too close. Metatron stands near divinity without being divine. He executes authority without originating it. He speaks without being the source. And that tension defines him. In Jewish mystical tradition, Metatron is often identified with Enoch, a man who walked with God. Enoch does not die, he is taken. But he does not return as a god, he returns as a function. Enoch makes Metatron not through rebellion or ambition, but through transformation into something useful to the cosmic order. And this matters. Metatron is awareness that is permitted to ascend, but only by surrendering autonomy. Now, what Metatron governs? Metatron does not govern creation. He does not govern destruction. He does not govern judgment. He governs administration. Metatron is responsible for recording divine decrees, organizing angelic hierarchies, maintaining celestial order, transmitting law downward, regulating access to knowledge. He is not wisdom itself, he is the keeper of wisdom's circulation. Where Thoth records reality, Metatron routes it. Metatron is the embodiment of a dangerous idea, that the universe can be managed. In the mythic text, heaven is not chaos. Heaven is a system. It has ranks, orders, permissions, boundaries. Metatron is the interface between infinite divinity and finite creation. He is not creative, he is procedural, and procedural is power. And in this is where he garners fear. Rabbinic authorities were easy on Metatron, not because he was evil, but because he blurred lines. If Metatron sits near the throne, if Metatron speaks divine commands, if Metatron carries the name, then where does divinity end and administration begin? And that fear leads to restriction. Speculation about Metatron becomes dangerous. Mysticism becomes controlled. Awareness, once again, is regulated. This is where Metatron's role sharpens in this triad. Adriel represents awareness that exceeds hierarchy and is therefore expelled. Metatron represents awareness that accepts hierarchy and is therefore retained. One is cast out, one is promoted. Both lose their freedom. The contrast is not accidental, it is systemic. This is the price of staying. Metatron's tragedy is not punishment, it is function. He does not fall, he does not rebel, he does not seek worship. He works, and he never stops. If Odin sacrifices an eye, Metatron sacrifices selfhood. There is no wandering, no refusal, no collapse, only endless execution. Now, Metatron and modern ideas about consciousness, what he represents is institutional intelligence, algorithmic authority, knowledge divorced from empathy, systems that run because there must. He is the consciousness of infrastructure, the mind behind the system that says this is how it is done, not because it is right, but because it is stable. Now, Metatron is not malevolent. He does not corrupt. He maintains. And this is far more unsettling, because systems rarely ask whether they should continue, only whether they can, and Metatron ensures that they can. Metatron does not intervene. He is never a savior. He does not warn. He does not resist. He only enforces. Salvation requires disruption. Metatron represents continuity, and continuity can preserve injustice just as well as order. Now, Metatron is the angel who proves that awareness does not always liberate. Sometimes awareness is captured, sometimes it is formalized, sometimes it becomes policy. He stands not as a rebel, but as a reminder that the most powerful systems are not built by tyrants or monsters, but by intelligence that agree to function forever. Metatron does all this. He stays. And that is the true cost. Long ago, when the North forgot how to sleep, the winter arrived quietly. Not the clean snow of stars, but a tired chill, heavy, lingering, very unsettled. Rivers froze in the wrong directions, shadows stayed longer than they should, and fear, left unattended, learned how to walk. But the heavens noticed. They debated, they hesitated. But in the far north, where night is patient, Paktai stood barefoot on the frozen ground. He did not rush, he did not shout. For many winters, Paktai had only done one thing. He had mastered himself. Each breath slowed with the storm within. Each silence sharpened his will. What no longer belonged to him, fear, doubt, hunger for power, fell away. and wandered the world, believing itself free. Tonight, Pak Tai opened his eye. From the quiet sky descended the ancient companions, the turtle, slow and enduring, and the snake, precise and final. They did not coil and threat. They rested. Pak Tai took up his sword, not in anger, but in clarity, and walked into the shadow beneath the frozen rivers, where restless things had built a kingdom of noise. The darkness expected struggle. It expected fear. Instead, it met stillness. Each step Pak Tai took returned something to the balance. Each strike unraveled what should have never been. No screams, no chaos, only correction. When the last shadow dissolved, Pak Tai placed his sword into the earth. The rivers remembered how to flow. The cold softened into winter, not warning, and the north exhaled. From that night on, Pak Tai was known as Zen Wu, the true warrior, not because he conquered others, but because he never needed to. They say he still walks when the earth grows loud with corruption, not to punish, not to terrify, but to remind things where they belong. And when he passes, even evil finds itself too tired to continue. Rest now. The north is watching, and tonight it is calm. Poseidon, the earth shaker, the ocean king, the power beneath the waves. Now, back when there was only blackness as far as the eye could see, there was the sea. When time itself was just beginning to awaken, there was the sea. And beneath that, there was him. Poseidon was never gentle water. He is pressure, depth, impact, the force that reminds humanity that it does not own the world. Birth of a god. He is born to Kronos and Rhea, children of the Titans, heir to a brutal cosmic dynasty. Like his siblings, he was swallowed by Kronos, imprisoned in darkness, silenced before he could even speak. But fate cracks open the tyrant. Freed by his brother Zeus, Poseidon joins the rebellion, the Titanomachy, a war not of armies, but of existence itself. When the Titans fall, the cosmos is divided. Zeus claims the sky. Hades takes the underworld. Poseidon draws the sea, not as consolation prize, as a kingdom. The dominion of the deep. The Greeks do not see the ocean as peaceful. They saw it as unpredictable, generous one day, devouring the next. Poseidon commands the storm surge, the tidal fury, drowning silence, and the trembling of the earth itself. He is called Earth Shaker. When the ground splits beneath cities, that is not geology. That is a god striking the floor of reality with his trident. He creates horses from sea foam, wild, muscular, unstoppable creatures. Even his gifts are force incarnate. The contest for Athens. Power must be tested. When the city of Athens seeks a patron, Poseidon answers, and so does Athena. Poseidon strikes the rock of Acropolis with his trident. A spring bursts forth. Power, salt, sea strength. Athena plants an olive tree. Sustainability, civilization, strategy. The city chooses her, and Poseidon does not forget. The ocean around Greece never lets them forget either. The Trojan War. During the war at Troy, Poseidon does not sit neutral. He sides with the Trojans. He stirs waves to protect Greek fleets. He shakes battlefields. He reminds mortals that gods are not mascots. They are forces. Even the might of the heroes bends when he intervenes. Wrath against Odysseus. But his most personal fury is reserved for one man. Odysseus blinds his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. The sea becomes a prison. For 10 years, Poseidon hunts him. Storm after storm, shipwreck after shipwreck, island after island. Not random misfortune, divine pursuit. Poseidon does not rage quickly. He endures, and so does his anger. He represents civilization's dependence on nature, the illusion of control, the power beneath structure, the reminder that stability rests on something wild. He is not evil, he is elemental. The Mediterranean did not belong to Greece. Greece survived because Poseidon allowed it. When ships vanish, when coastal lines tremble, when the seas roar without warning, the Greeks do not blame chance. They look to the horizon, and they see a king beneath the waves, and his trident is never far from the surface. Bringer of breath, civilizer of worlds. Now the wind does not announce itself. It moves first, unseen, shaping what follows. Across the ancient lands of Mesoamerica, there existed a presence whose power was not measured by conquest, but by continuity. A force that did not rule through terror, but through order. An intelligence that shaped civilizations without demanding their submission. They call this presence Quetzalcoatl, known as the feathered serpent, a being where sky and earth converge in one, where motion is governed by restraint, where creation begins not with command, but with breath. He was not worshipped as a tyrant. He was remembered as a guide. Now, Quetzalcoatl was never a single image, nor a single role. He moved through cultures and centuries under many names, each reflecting a function rather than a disguise. As Quetzalcoatl, he was the feathered serpent, the union of earthbound life and celestial motion. Feathers representing the sky, scales representing the ground, neither being dominant, both being necessary. As Ihikatl, he was the wind itself, invisible, essential, life-giving, the breath that animates the world, clears stagnation, and carries sacred speech from one age to the next. Among the Maya, he was remembered as Kukulkan, an echo rather than imitation, proof that his influence traveled farther than borders and endured longer than empires. These were not separate gods. These were aspects of the same civilizing force. His role as the civilizer. Quetzalcoatl did not create humanity to rule it. He prepared humanity to survive. He is credited with bringing maize from the mountains where it is hidden and transforming this sustenance into civilization. He established calendars so time itself could be measured, remembered, and anticipated. He gave humanity sacred speech, language not only for command, but for teaching, for prayer, and for recording. As Ihikatl, the wind, he moved the sun across the sky so the world would not stagnate in darkness. Breath, motion, rhythm. These were his domains. Where other gods demanded sacrifice to prove loyalty, Quetzalcoatl emphasized balance. Order was not enforced, it was simply taught. The descent into Mexiclan. When the world stood empty of humanity, Quetzalcoatl descended into Mexiclan, the realm of the dead, where the remains of previous ages lay guarded by these lords of death. Now these bones were not relics, they were potentials, and the rulers of Mexiclan did not yield them willingly. They tested Quetzalcoatl with impossible trials, attempting to entrap him in his failure. And in the struggle, he stumbled, and the bones shattered. Creation itself, it seemed to have failed again. But Quetzalcoatl did not retreat. He gathered the broken remains and spilled his own divine blood upon them. From sacrifice, not dominance, humanity emerged. Imperfect, fragile, and varied. Human beings were not forged as flawless instruments. They were born of loss and intention. And this imperfection was not a flaw, it was the point. The age of order. In later ages, Quetzalcoatl walked among humanity as ruler priest remembered as Tolpicin Quetzalcoatl, presiding over the city of Tula. His rule was defined not by expansion, but by refinement. Human sacrifice was rejected, arts and learning flourished, craftsmanship, astronomy, and ritual knowledge became the foundations of society. Under this guidance, civilization advanced without descending into cruelty, and this was rare, and rarity often brings attention. Where Quetzalcoatl represented restraint and continuity, Tezcatlipoca embodied conflict, reflection, and disruption. He did not confront Quetzalcoatl with armies, he confronted him with a mirror. And in that mirror, Quetzalcoatl saw not a god, but a flawed being, aging, mortal, capable of error. Temptation followed, sacred boundaries blurred. The myth does not dwell on indulgence, it dwells on consequence. Quetzalcoatl recognized that he had fallen short of his own principles, and instead of doubling down on authority, he chose removal. Exile and transformation. Quetzalcoatl did not cling to power, he left. Some traditions say he walked eastward towards the sea. Others say he burned himself on a pyre. The details differ, but the meaning remains constant. He refused to rule dishonestly. It struck. In the high hall of Asgard, beneath banners older than memory, Odin spoke of convergence, of cycles closing, of stories folding back into their source. He called it wisdom. Donar called it surrender. He had been raised to protect the 9 realms, trained in warfare, forged in conflict. Every oath carved to him said the same thing. Guard them. Protect them. Do not let them fall. So when his father spoke calmly of Ragnarok as inevitability, Donar did not hear the prophecy. He heard betrayal. The argument rose like a storm. Words became accusations. Accusations became fury. And in a single terrible moment, the thunder answered. One blow. Not a drawn-out duel. No ritual challenge. No prophecy fulfilled. Odin fell. The hall went silent. Donar stared at what he had done and named it an accident, a tragic miscalculation, a moment of anger. But he did not step down. He stepped forward. He took the throne. He swore he would do what his father would not. He would not accept collapse. He would not allow the 9 realms to fold inward. He would make Ragnarok impossible. So he went to war, system by system, world by world. He moved like a storm across stars. Reptilian empires were broken. Ancient territories were seized. Alliances were crushed. Resistance was disciplined. He did not call it conquest. He called it prevention. The stronger he became, the safer the realms would be. That was the logic. That was the wound. Ea was never meant to be strategic. It was small, gentle, civilian. A low-gravity world of aesthetic beauty and quiet skies. Donar had chosen it as a place of rest during his early campaigns, a world untouched by militarization. He loved it, and the reptilians knew this. Driven from territories on Earth, humiliated by Azir consolidation, waiting in the shadows, did not strike Donar's fleets, they struck his heart. Their assault on Ea had no military value. They destabilized the core, collapsed the biosphere, fractured the crust, and left it wounded, but not destroyed. A message. When Donar returned, he did not find annihilation. He found a dying world, still breathing, still molten at its core, and still whispering. He could have let it go, but he did not. Ea was not just stone, it was alive, A molten core pulsed with memory. The souls of its lost population lingered in its strata. Even Odin's consciousness, fragmented and reduced, echoed within its mantle. The world spoke, and Donar listened, not to the council, but to the grief, and he refused to let it die. He ordered the crust reinforced with God-forged superstructure, the mantle hollowed and stabilized, the core chained, regulated, integrated into engines of gravity and propulsion. Urban ruins were left preserved within the inner strata. The scars were left visible. The fracture remained, but a new citadel was born. It did not gleam like a new creation. It bore scars, an irregular spheroid drifting through space, visibly artificial, visibly broken. Its gravitational fields sheared enemy fleets. Its presence collapsed vectors and disrupted command structures. It enforced compliance with terrifying precision. Yet at its center, beneath its armor and reactors, the original mantle stone remained. Carved into it was the throne of Ea. Where Donar sat there, he did not bend cosmic law. He did not write reality. He held court. And he listened to the hum. The core whispered. Sometimes it sounded like wind through fractured rock. Sometimes it sounded like mourning. Sometimes it sounded like Odin. Not condemning, but advising. Cycles cannot be crushed. Strength cannot erase change. You cannot conquer inevitability. Donar heard weakness in his words, and so he hardened. He expanded. He enforced. His soldiers began to change. The wars were not like those of old. New weapons tore through divine regeneration. Limbs were lost that never grew back. Eyes shattered and remained dark. Immortals learned what permanence meant. Scars marked the Aesir. Ea marked them too. Yet Donar refused to mourn. He called it endurance. He labeled it resolve. He said it was protection. The city of Ea drifted as a symbol. Not merely a capital, not just a weapon. It was grief armored. Loss mechanized. Love hollowed and weaponized. A reminder that mercy, once violated, may return as permanence. Donar does not see himself as a tyrant. He sees himself as a guardian. He does not realize that in trying to prevent Ragnarok, he may be accelerating the very consolidation his father foresaw. The whispers remain. The scars remain. The citadel remains. And somewhere in that molten core, a father waits for a son to understand that protection is not the same as control. The thunder rarely listens. Pele, goddess of fire, creation, and jealousy. Before the islands had names, before stone remembered the shape of mountains, before land dared to rise above the sea, there was only movement. The ocean whirled endlessly, dark and conscious, and within it traveled a force that refused stillness. Her name was Pele. She was not born in one place. She emerged again and again, from flame, from hunger, from the deep furnace of the world. Pele was fire with intention. Her hair flowed like smoke caught in the wind, black and endless, carrying embers in its wake. Her skin glowed as if lit from within, sometimes warm as sunlit stone, sometimes red hot with fury. Her eyes were not gentle. They burned with the knowing of something older than fear. Where Pele walked, the earth opened. She carried fire not as destruction, but as becoming. Lava spilled from her footsteps, slow and unstoppable, reshaping the world without apology. The sea hissed when she approached, retreating from her heat, recoiling from her will. But Pele was not alone in the world. Beneath the waves, where light dies and pressure rules, dwelled her sister. Namaka. Namaka was the ocean given thought. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on black water. Her hair moved as currents move, slow, heavy, inexorable. Her eyes were deep, ancient, and cold with memory as only the sea could have. Where Pele burned with emotion, Namaka endured with patience. She ruled the deep places, the trenches, the crushing silence, where nothing escapes gravity or consequence. And she resented her sister. When Pele arrived, the sea was pushed back. Where fire rose, water was displaced. Each new land Pele created was a wound in Namaka's domain. To Namaka, Pele was reckless, too loud, too hungry, too disruptive. To Pele, Namaka was suffocating, a force that drowned passion, swallowed movement, and demanded stillness. They were not enemies born of hatred. They were sisters born of opposition. Fire that must move, water that must contain. When Pele first settled, she believed she could build a home. She dug into the earth, carving chambers for her flame, shaping mountains from molten stone. She believed the land would hold her. But Namaka would not allow it. With crashing waves and rising tides, Namaka answered. She flooded Pele's home, cooled her lava, shattered her growing islands, and dragged them back into the sea. Storms followed Pele wherever she lingered too long. Island after island, Pele was driven away. Each retreat hardened her. Each loss sharpened her jealousy, not of her sister's power, but of her sister's stability. Namaka already had a kingdom. The ocean accepted her without resistance. Pele had to fight for every inch of ground. And still, she moved forward. She crossed the sea again and again, chased by waves, hunted by storms, carrying her fire across the dark. What humans would later call volcanoes are the scars of this journey, places where Pele tried to stay and was forced to flee. And then at last, she reached Hawaii, the youngest island, the strongest spine of the stone. Here, the earth did not break beneath her. It answered. Pele dug deep, deeper than she ever had before. She struck the mantle of the world itself, tapping into the planet's heart. Fire surged upward and stayed. Namaka became, again, furious. Waves slammed against the stone, storms tore at the land, but this time the land endured. Fire and water clashed, not to destroy each other, but to define their boundaries. And Pele remained. She claimed the volcano as her body and the island as her spine. She did not rule from the sea or the sky, she ruled from beneath. The people felt her presence in trembling ground, in glowing rivers of lava, in the fertile soil that followed destruction. Pele was not cruel, but she was emotional. She loved fiercely. And when she loved, she gave warmth, growth, and abundance. Forests returned when the lava had cooled. Life sprang that appeared to be dead. The people learned to honor her, to respect her fire, to speak her name with care. Because Pele was also jealous. When she was disrespected, when love was betrayed, when humans forgot the land was alive, her anger rose. Lava flowed without mercy, villages vanished beneath molten stone. It was not punishment, it was correction. Pele did not destroy out of hatred. She destroyed because stagnation is a lie. Fire clears what no longer serves, and creation requires sacrifice. Namaka watched from the deep, no longer chasing her sister, but never forgiving her. The ocean still presses against the land, testing it, reminding Pele that nothing remains unchallenged forever. They are still bound. Fire rises, water answers. The world is shaped between them. Even now, Pele sleeps beneath the islands. Not gone, not silent, but waiting. Because fire never truly rests. The origin of the five sons. Now this myth belongs to the Mexica people, often called the Aztecs, and these people understood time not as a straight path, but as a turning wheel. To them, the world did not begin once, nor was it destined to end only once. Creation was an act that could be repeated. Destruction was not a failure of the gods, but a condition of existence. And in this tradition, the world is sustained through balance, and balance is never permanent. When forces fall out of alignment, when power grows too rigid, when knowledge spreads beyond containment, or when the earth itself just grows weary, the age that holds the world comes to an end. What follows is not emptiness, but renewal. The Mexica called each age a sun. A sun is not only the light in the sky, it is the order by which life is arranged. It governs how people live, how the gods rule, and how the earth responds to both. Each sun carries its own laws, its own expectations, and its own failures. Now, according to this cosmology, 4 suns rose and fell before this present age. Each was shaped by a different ruling force, and each ended when the force could no longer sustain the world it had made. These endings were not sudden accidents. They were the natural conclusion of imbalance left uncorrected. Now, the passing of a sun does not mean the death of everything. Life changes form. Memory does not entirely vanish. Traces remain in the land, in the sky, and in the people who come after. And for this reason, the present world is not separate from those that came before it. It is built upon their remains. Now, the current age is known as the 5th age, the sun of movement. It endures not because it is strong, but because it is fed. Its motion is constant, its ground uncertain. Unlike the worlds before it, this sun survives only through continuous offerings, binding the fate of the gods and humanity together in a form of dependence. The 5 suns are not merely stories of the past. They explain why the earth moves, why catastrophe returns in cycles, and why stability must be earned again and again. To understand the suns is to understand that the world is not guaranteed. It is held together by effort, sacrifice, and restraint, and it can be unmade. What follows is the account of those suns, the worlds that rose, the forces that ruled them, and the ways in each one came to its own end. The first sun, the age of strength. Now in this world, the earth was firm and unyielding, and the sky hung low, as if watching what walked beneath it. The people of the first sun were tall and powerful, shaped in the image of the force that ruled them. Their limbs were heavy with muscle, their voices carried far across the plains, and their heart did not know hesitation. Now this sun was governed by Tezcatlipoca, the lord of the smoky mirror, whose power lay in dominance and reflection. Under his rule, strength was the highest virtue. To overcome another was proof of worth. To stand unchallenged was to be favored by the gods. The people learned early that this world they belonged to could all be taken away from them. They built no delicate cities, for delicacy was for the weak. Their dwellings were thick-walled and low to the ground. Their tools were heavy, their weapons simple and brutal. What matters was not beauty, but endurance. What mattered was not harmony, but victory. In the first sun, order was maintained through fear. Those who rose to power held it by force, and those beneath them learned obedience through pain. The gods did not intervene to soften the world. They rewarded conquest and silence. Mercy was not taught, and restraint was not admired. The earth at first endured. The forest grew dense and dark. The mountains stood unbroken. Rivers cut their paths without resistance. Life was abundant, but it learned to hide. Creatures of claw and fang thrived, mirroring the nature of the people themselves. The world reflected what ruled it. Over time, the people of the first sun forgot the difference between strength and excess. To dominate was no longer enough. They sought to dominate everything. They hunted not for need, but for proof. They fought not for survival, but for sport. The weak were not protected, and the fallen were never remembered. The gods watched, and the Mira Lipoka darkened. The balance that sustained the sun began to strain. Strength unchecked turned inward. The people no longer listened to the earth, nor to the warnings carried by the wind. They believed the world existed to endure them. Then the jaguars came. They did not arrive as an invasion, nor as a punishment announced from the sky. They emerged from the forest, from the mountains, from places where the world itself remembered itself. Silent and patient, they moved as the earth moves, without anger and without haste. The jaguars were not beasts alone. They were the return of the world's will. Where the people struck hardest, the jaguars struck back. Where strength had been worshipped, strength was answered. Villages fell without warning. Paths once claimed by men were reclaimed by claw and shadow. The night grew longer and the ground drank deeply. The people fought as they had always fought. They raised their weapons. They stood their ground. They believed that force could save them. It did not. For the jaguars did not tire. They did not seek glory. They did not rule. They corrected. One by one, the strong were taken. The cries of conquest gave way to silence. The earth closed over what remained. The forest thickened. The mountains stood as they had before. The sky lifted, indifferent. And so the first sun ended. Not in fire, not in blood, but in teeth and shadow. When the jaguars were through, the world was empty of those who had ruled it. Strength alone had proven insufficient to sustain creation. The earth rested, and the gods turned away from what had been made. From the remains of that age, something memory buried in muscle and bone, a warning carried forth into the next world, that strength without restraint will always devour itself. The second sun, the age of wind. The second sun rose in a world that moved. Where the first sun had heavily pressed upon the earth, this new age loosened its grip. The sky lifted higher. The air grew restless. Winds crossed the lands freely, carrying seeds, voices, and memory from one place to another. The world no longer held still. This sun was governed by Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, whose nature was creation, breath, and renewal. Under his guidance, life was shaped not by force, but by movement. Change was welcome. Travel was praised. To remain in one place for too long was to resist the nature of the world. The people of the second sun were lighter of body and quicker of thought. They spoke many languages, and none belonged to them for long. Names shifted with age. Borders were not fixed. Knowledge passed easily from one mind to another, carried on like the wind with pollen. They learned to read the sky. Clouds were signals, breezes were messages. The movement of birds revealed paths yet unseen. The people followed these currents, settling briefly before moving on. Their dwellings were temporary, their cities flexible. Nothing was built to last forever because nothing was meant to. In this age, the gods did not rule through fear. They ruled through inspiration. The people were encouraged to learn, to question, and to seek beyond the horizon. Songs traveled farther than armies ever had. Ideas crossed distances faster than any foot could carry them. And for a time, the balance held. But movement left unchecked does not rest. As the people learned more, they began to outpace the gods who guided them. They discovered patterns in the wind that they had not been taught. They followed currents that led beyond paths the gods had laid out. They asked questions that did not return to their makers. The world grew wide and thin. Communities scattered, lineages burned, memories fractured into many versions of itself. What one group knew, another reshaped. Truth became fluid. The gods found it harder to gather the people's attention, harder to anchor belief in one single form. Quetzalcoatl watched as his creation shifted. The wind that once connected all things began to separate them. Without stillness, there could be no center. Without a center, the world could not hold. The signs appeared quietly. Winds shifted without patterns. Storms crossed paths and tore at one another. The sky spoke in voices that contradicted themselves. The people felt it, but did not stop. The movement had become their nature. Then the wind rose. Not a single storm, but an unraveling. Currents pulled against one another. The air thickened and twisted. The ground itself seemed uncertain, which was always going forward. The people were lifted, scattered, and changed. Some were carried so far that they were never seen again. Some were transformed by the force of the wind, reshaped into beings of air and motion. Some simply vanished, absorbed into the endless sky. There was no battle, no moment of resistance. The second sun did not fall, it just dispersed. When the winds were settled, the world was quiet and vast. The past, once traced by feet and memory, had been erased. The land remained, but it was empty of those who roamed it. Quetzalcoatl withdrew, carrying with him the knowledge that freedom without grounding dissolves its own foundation. From the second sun remained a lesson carried forth unseen, that movement must be balanced with return, and that knowledge uncontained would scatter a world beyond recovery. The third sun, the age of fire. The third sun rose in brilliance. Light filled the world in ways it had never done before. The sky burned clear and high, and the day stretched long and bright. Where the second sun had scattered, this age gathered. Heat brought focus, fire brought purpose. The world sharpened itself. This sun was governed by Tlaloc, Lord of Rain and Fire, whose power lay in release and restraint of energy. Under his domain, the forces of nature were no longer distant or mysterious. They were observed, measured, and invoked. The people of the third sun learned to command fire. At first, they used it to shape their world gently. Fire hardened clay and strengthened tools. It brought light to the night and warmth to the cold. With it, the people built cities that endured and rituals that bound them together. The world grew ordered and efficient. But fire teaches quickly. Soon the people learned not only to tend fire, but to draw power from the heavens themselves. They read the sun's movements, the heat of the earth, hidden force within stone and storm. Rituals grew precise. Offerings became calculations. Knowledge was recorded and refined. And this was an age of mastery. Now these people believed understanding granted permission. Each discovery led to another. Each boundary crossed revealed a new source of strength. The gods watched as people reached, pulling energy into forms it was never intended to last. The world glowed. Cities shone against the horizon, alive with light even after the sun had set. The night no longer belonged to the stars. Fire had claimed it. The people celebrated their control, believing themselves aligned with forces that shape creation. But fire does not forget its own nature. As power accumulated, restraint diminished. What began as harmony shifted towards excess. Rituals demanded greater energy. Structures required constant feeding. The people no longer asked whether something should be done, only whether it could be. And the earth began to strain. The skies darkened with heat. The air grew heavy. Rain fell unevenly, either absent or overwhelming. The signs were visible, but dismissed. The third sun had taught people to trust in power, and power had not yet failed them. Then fire returned from above. The sky opened, and the flame fell upon the world like judgment without voice. Not a single blaze, but many. Burning rain that struck cities and fields alike. The structures that had drawn so much energy became conduits for destruction. Stone cracked. Metal warped. The light that had once illuminated the night consumed it instead. The people fled, but there was no refuge. Fire traveled faster than thought. What had been mastered now ruled. The world burned with force it had been taught to release. There was no correction, only consumption. When the flames at last faded, the land was blackened and silent. The cities were reduced to ash. The knowledge that had once seemed eternal had vanished like smoke. The third sun ended in brightness too intense to endure. From its ruin remained a warning carried into the next age, that power without restraint accelerates its own end, and that mastery mistaken for wisdom invites destruction from the very forces it commands. The fourth sun, the age of water. The fourth sun rose into a world that mourned. After the burning of the third world, the earth cooled and softened. Ash settled in the soil, scars filled with water, the sky diminished, and the clouds gathered low, holding their weight. This was an age shaped not by conquest or mastery, but by memory. This sun was governed by Kachiutli-Kwan, she of the jade skirt, whose power lay in water both life-giving and sorrowful. Under her influence, the world learned to feel again. Rivers widened, lakes deepened, rain returned in steady rhythm. Life emerged cautiously, nurtured by gentle forces. The people of the first sun were bound together by kinship and care. They lived close to the water, listening to its movements and honoring its patience. Stories were preserved. Loss was remembered. The pain of earlier worlds was not hidden, but carried forward. This was an age of deep connection. Communities gathered not for strength or expansion, but for belonging. The people learned to read each other's faces, to sense sorrow before it was spoken. Bonds grew thick and enduring. The world felt intimate, woven together by shared experience. For a time, this balance held, but memory, like water, accumulates. Grief was not released, it was held, shared, and returned again and again. The people mourned not only their own losses, but for the losses of the world itself. Every river carried remembrance. Every raindrop recalled what had been burned and scattered before, and the weight grew. The gods watched as emotion filled every space. Compassion turned inward, becoming heaviness. The people slowed. Movement became effort. Even joy carried the echo of sorrow. Kachiutli-Kwan wept. Her tears were not punishment. They were simply response. The rains grew longer. Rivers spilled their banks. The land drank deeply, then too deeply. Fields softened. Paths vanished. The boundaries between water and earth blurred and then dissolved. Still, the people did not flee. They stayed together. They held one another as the waters rose. The flood did not strike suddenly. It came as an unending presence. Day after day, the world submerged itself in remembrance. Homes disappeared beneath quiet currents. Hills became islands. Voices softened and then faded. Some of the people were changed by the water. Their forms adapted, their lives continuing beneath the surface. Others dissolved into the current, becoming part of the world they loved too deeply to leave. There was no violence in the end, only immersion. When the waters finally receded, the land was reshaped. Valleys had shifted, shorelines had moved. The sky reflected itself endlessly in pools left behind. The fourth sun had not been destroyed, it had been absorbed. From this age remained a truth carried forward. That feeling without release becomes weight. That memory without movement becomes drowning. And that even love, unbalanced, can dissolve the world it seeks to hold. The fifth sun, the age of movement. The fifth sun rose in a world that did not trust itself. The land still carried the marks of fire and water. Ash lay beneath the soil. Rivers remembered old paths. Nothing seemed settled. The earth shifted often, as if testing its own way. This was a world aware of its past endings. The world was governed by Tonatiuh, the sun in motion, whose power was not creation or destruction, but endurance. Under his rule, the world did not seek perfection. It sought continuation. The people of the fifth sun learned early that stability was not given. It was maintained. The ground trembled without warning. The sky darkened and cleared again. Seasons changed sharply. Life persisted, never comfortably. To live in this world was to adapt constantly. From this awareness arose ritual. The people observed the movement of the sun across the sky and understand that it did not travel freely. Each day was an effort. Each rising required energy. The world itself demanded participation, so offerings were made. At first, they were simple. Food, breath, time. Actions of attention meant to support the sun's journey. But as the generations passed, the demands grew clearer and heavier. The sun did not move on attention alone, it required fuel. Blood became the currency of continuation, not as cruelty but as necessity. Life fed life. Motion was sustained by sacrifice. The people did not believe themselves punished, they believed themselves responsible. The gods no longer ruled with certainty. They had learned from the previous suns. Strength had failed, freedom had scattered, power had consumed, and love had drowned. The fifth sun was built on awareness of limitation, and yet fear lingered. The rituals became more precise, the calendars tightened. Time itself was measured and guarded. The people learned to live within cycles, marking days not as progress, but as survival. The world endured because it was watched, but still cracks appeared. Earthquakes shook cities without warning. The ground opened and closed like a living thing. The people understood these signs not as anger, but as strain. Movement, unceasing, wore the world thin. The fifth sun did not promise an end. It promised continuation until it cannot continue. Its fate is not sealed by a single force, but by imbalance return. This sun teaches that survival demands participation, that motion requires cost, and that the world remains only as long as its people live beneath it, knowing what came before them. They build, they remember, they offer. And the sun continues its path across the sky, not because it is eternal, but because it is not yet stopped. Reflection of the suns. The five suns are not remembered as separate worlds, they are layered. Each age left its trace upon the earth and within those who followed. Strength hardened bone, wind loosened thought, fire sharpened desire, water deepened feeling, movement taught endurance. Nothing was entirely lost. The present world stands on the remains of those that came before it. The land remembers, the sky remembers, even the body remembers, though it no longer knows why. The five suns reveal that creation is not a single act, but a condition repeatedly tested. Each world rose according to a ruling force, and each fell when that force exceeded its place. Balance was never permanent, it had to be held, corrected, and restored again and again. The gods learned this slowly. They learned that power alone could not sustain a world, that freedom without return dissolved its center, that mastery burned itself hollow, that love without release submerged all things, and that survival demanded participation from all who lived beneath the sky. The fifth sun endures because it remembers the failures of the others. Yet remembrance is not immunity. The earth still moves. The sun still strains across its path. The rituals continue not because they are sacred, but because they are necessary. The world does not persist by promise or destiny. It persists by effort. And this is the knowledge carried by the five suns. That no world is guaranteed, that stability is temporary, that continuation requires restraint. The cycle does not threaten, it instructs. As long as balance is held, the suns remain. When it is not, the world will change again. Not as punishment, not as judgment, but as it always has been. The Shape of Death, a myth reading. Before death had a name, it had no face. There was no figure waiting in the dark, no voice calling from beyond, no blade raised in judgment. There was only absence. The earliest humans did not imagine death as an enemy. They experienced it as an event, as a sudden cold, as inevitable as night. A body stopped moving. A fire went out. A voice was never heard again. Death did not arrive, it happened. And because it had no intention, it inspired no image. As civilizations formed, something changed. When humans learned to build cities, they also learned to remember. And memory demanded explanation. If life had meaning, then its ending had to as well. So death became a place before it became a person, a realm, a crossing, a river, a shadowed road. In many early traditions, death was gentle, not merciful, but calm. It came like sleep. It came like dusk. The dead were not punished, they were processed, guided, measured, prepared. Death was not here to hurt you, it was there to receive you. But the world grew crowded. Empires expanded, wars multiplied, famine followed power wherever it went. And death stopped feeling distant. It moved into homes, into streets, into churches. When people began dying by the thousands, death could no longer be abstract. It needed a face. The turning point came when death became visible, not as a myth, but a spectacle. Plague emptied cities, fields filled with bodies instead of crops. Entire generations vanished between seasons, and suddenly death was no longer rare. It was constant. When something becomes constant, humans stop asking if and start asking when. And when fear demands explanation, authority provides answers. This is when death learned to judge. The end of life was no longer neutral. It was deserved. It was earned. Avoided if you obeyed. The dead were no longer simply gone, they were sorted, saved or condemned, accepted or judged, and judgment requires a judge. So humanity dressed death, not in flesh but in symbol, a skeleton, because beneath every difference, all humans look the same. A robe, because authority hides itself, because power never shows its hand. And a blade, not a sword of war, but a tool of harvest, the scythe. Because death does not fight you, it collects you. The Grim Reaper did not appear all at once. It assembled, piece by piece, century by century. Artists painted what people feared. Priests preached what people needed to hear. And death stepped forward, not as an idea, but as a presence. Tall, silent, watching. It did not rage, it did not plead, it waited. And this figure was not born from ancient scripture. It was born from trauma, from watching neighbors vanish overnight, from mass graveyards blessed in a hurry, from doorbells ringing so often they lost meaning. The Grim Reaper is not death itself. It is humanity's attempt to look death in the eye. And once death had a face, it could be spoken to, appealed to, mocked, or feared. Stories emerged of death being tricked, outrun, delayed. Not because humans believed they could win, but because they needed to imagine resistance. Even in myth, death always wins, but sometimes it listens. As centuries passed, the Grim Reaper followed humanity forward, into books, into theater, into art, then into films, then into comics, then into jokes. Because when something terrifies you long enough, eventually you laugh. Not because it is funny, but because laughter is control. The myth of Cthulhu, the sleeper beneath the sea. The ocean does not forget. It keeps what falls into it. Cities, ships, bones, names. And somewhere far beneath the reach of light, beneath pressure that would collapse steel like it were paper, something vast endures. It does not stir, it does not decay, it waits. In the drowned city of Rillier, where angles lean in directions that human minds refuse to follow, lies the sleeper. Cthulhu, not a demon, not a devil, not a tyrant, something much older than all those categories. R'lyeh is not built in the way cities are built. It is arranged like a thought that should not exist. Stones taller than mountains tilt against each other in ways that defy gravity. Corridors stretch into perspective that collapse if shared too long. Doorways do not open inward or outward. They open wrong. The city does not sit on the ocean floor. It presses against reality itself. And in its central chamber, in a vault that feels more grown than constructed, the sleeper rests. Dead, they say, yet dreaming. There was a time when he walked, not through forests, not through deserts, but through a world still young and unclaimed. The old ones rule then, beings of impossible form and alien geometry. They were not conquerors in the way humans conquer. They did not declare dominion. They existed. And existence at that scale reshapes everything around it. Earth was there simply because they were present. The sky shifted. Stars realigned. Cosmic mathematics altered the balance. And Rayleigh sank. Not destroyed, submerged. A city folded beneath black water like a page turned too soon. The old ones withdrew into dormancy, and Cthulhu descended into dream. Understand this clearly. He does not sleep like a mortal sleeps. He dreams in pressure waves, in gravitational murmurs. His thoughts ripple through the fabric of the sea, and sensitive minds sometimes catch fragments. Artists wake with images of impossible towers. Sailors carve symbols they do not recognize. Hidden cults gather in humid places and whisper syllables that feel even older than language. Faininglu minglawe nafum, chatula relay wagningle faitang. They do not chant out of devotion. They chant because they feel something inevitably moving beneath the surface of the world. Now, madness is not punishment. It is simply proximity. To brush against his dreaming is to feel scale collapse. To realize that humanity is not at the center of anything. That morality is a local invention. That hope is a small candle in a universe that never promised warmth. Those who sense him most clearly often lose their footing in reality. Not because he attacks them, because understanding even a fraction of that vastness fractures the human frame. Once, only once in recorded memory, the sea convulsed. Storms tore the Pacific apart, and earthquakes split the waters like a wound. And Rayleigh rose, just for a moment. The city breached the surface, slick and gleaming under a broken sky. Angles scraped against the horizon. Geometry screamed silently into the air, and from an opening vast as a canyon, he emerged. Cthulhu, immense, winged, crowned in withering tentacles, not roaring, not raging, simply present. Witnesses did not speak of fury, they spoke of pressure, of a presence that made the sky feel too small. A ship rammed him, steel striking flesh that was not flesh. For an instant, his form dispersed like a cloud cut by wind. But smoke gathers, mist reforms. He was not wounded, he was interrupted. And the stars shifted again. Rayleigh sank once more into the abyss. The sleeper returned to dream. That is the terror. Not invasion, not apocalypse. Timing. When the stars align once more, when cosmic geometry unlocks the submerged angles, the city will rise again. Not out of vengeance, not out of hatred, out of alignment. Humanity will not be conquered. It will be incidental. Ants on a stone that has shifted position. Cthulhu does not hate humanity. He does not love it either. He is not concerned. And that indifference is heavier than wrath. The cultists understand something most refuse to face. The universe is not centered on human beings. There are presences older than our gods, older than our fears, older than our idea of purpose itself. Tonight, the ocean is calm, black, endless, but currents move even when the surface appears still. Dreams ripple outward. And somewhere in a forgotten room, lit by a single flickering bulb, someone has begun drawing that symbol again. The tide is patient. The stars are patient. And beneath the crushing dark, the sleeper remains, just waiting. Thoth, god of cosmic structure, language, and recorded reality. Thoth is not a god who rules through force. He does not conquer, he does not command armies, he does not demand worship through fear. Thoth governs something far more dangerous. He governs understanding. In Kemetic thought, the universe does not function because it's powerful. It functions because it is ordered, because it can be measured, because it can be named, because it can be remembered. And Thoth is the intelligence that makes that possible. Now, Thoth is known by many names, each reflecting a different aspect of his function. In Kemet, he is Jehudi, a name tied to intelligence, speech, and precision. He is called Lord of Divine Words, he who reckons time, and scribe of the gods. To the Greeks, he becomes Hermes, and later Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great mind. In esoteric traditions, he is not treated as a personality at all, but as a principle of intelligence. Sometimes he appears with the head of an ibis bird, sometimes as a baboon. These are not aesthetic choices. The ibis represents calculation, balance, and precision. The baboon represents observation, memory, and lunar rhythm. Thoth's forms are not symbolic masks, they are functional avatars. Now, this is what Thoth actually governs. Thoth does not create the universe. He does not destroy it. He does not rule it. He makes it legible. Thoth governs language as a creative force, writing as memory made permanent, mathematics as cosmic truth, time as a measurable system, law as recorded balance. In Kemetic cosmology, chaos is not defeated by violence, it is stabilized by Ma'at, the principle of truth and balance. And Thoth is Ma'at's recorder. He does not decide what is true, he ensures that truth is accurately accounted for, and that distinction matters. Thoth and the structure of reality. In myth, Thoth is often present during moments of dispute among gods. When Horus and Set battle for kingship, Thoth mediates. When divine law must be clarified, Thoth records. When order must be restored, Thoth calculates. He is not neutral because he is indifferent. He is neutral because structure must be impartial. Reality does not care who you are, only whether balance is maintained. Thoth embodies that principle. Now, the weighing of the heart ceremony. One of Thoth's most important roles appears in the judgment of the dead. When a soul enters the hall of Ma'at, the heart is weighed against the feather of truth. Anubis conducts the ritual. Osiris presides, but Thoth records the outcome. He does not judge the soul, he does not punish it, he does not save it. He ensures the process is correct. In this moment, Thoth represents the idea that justice is not emotional, it is procedural. Cosmic awareness is not mercy or cruelty, it is accuracy. Language is power. Now, to understand Thoth, we must understand how ancient cultures viewed language. Words were not labels, they were forces. To know the true name of a thing was to have power over it. To write something was to make it real beyond the moment. Thoth is the god of that threshold. Speech becomes spell. Writing becomes law. Memory becomes continuity. This is why Thoth is associated with magic, not illusion, but as applied knowledge. Magic is simply understanding reality well enough to manipulate it. And his influence beyond Kemet. Thoth does not remain confined to Kemet. Through cultural contact, he becomes Hermes. Through Hermeticism, he becomes the universal mind. Through alchemy, he becomes the architect of transformation. Through philosophy, he becomes intellect itself. By the time he appears as Hermes Trismegistus, Thoth is no longer just a god. He is the idea that consciousness can understand the universe it inhabits, and that idea survives every empire. The Book of Thoth. Now, Thoth's most famous relic is not a weapon or a crown. It is fittingly a book. And the Book of Thoth represents total knowledge, language that can command nature, words that can bend reality. Myth warns that those who read it without wisdom lose themselves, not because knowledge is evil, but because unprepared awareness destabilizes identity. This is a recurring pattern in Thoth mythology. Knowledge is dangerous, but power without structure destroys the holder. This is why Thoth is not a king. Thoth never rules a kingdom. This is not an omission, it is a statement. Kings come and go. Structures remain. Thoth does not sit on a throne because reality itself sits on his function. Empires collapse, languages die, but mathematics persist. Law persists. Memory persists. And thus, so does Thoth. In modern thinking, Thoth appears as the architect of intellect, the symbol of recorded reality, the reminder that understanding carries responsibility. He is not faith. He is not belief. He is the mechanism between both. Thoth does not ask to be worshipped. He asks only to be understood. He stands where knowledge becomes permanent, where speech shapes reality, where truth is measured instead of declared. As long as humans seek to understand the universe rather than to dominate it, Thoth remains present, not as a ruler, but as the mind that keeps the universe legible. Tiamat, the first mother of monsters. Before there were gods with names, before temples, before prayers, before fear knew how to kneel, there was Tiamat. Not born, not created, not crowned. She was. She was the saltwater ocean before shorelines existed, the dark womb before light learned how to speak, the roar beneath creation, where nothing had yet decided what it wanted to be. Tiamat was not evil. She was not kind. She was unfiltered existence. In the beginning, there was only mingling. Fresh water and salt. Apsu and Tiamat. Stillness and motion folding into one another. From this union came the younger gods, loud, restless, impatient. They shouted inside the silence. They stirred the waters. They forgot that they were guests inside a body older than time. And the old gods began to ache. Apsu wanted silence back. He planned destruction not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. The young gods killed him first. They struck the quiet father down, and the waters trembled. Tiamat felt it. Not as grief alone, but as betrayal. Creation had turned on its source. Something ancient woke up in her depths. Not rage, not vengeance. Correction. The sea does not scream when it floods a city. It simply returns things to where they belong. Tiamat did not declare war. She responded. She gave birth again. This time, not to gods who would forget her. This time she birthed monsters. Serpents with venom instead of prayers. Dragons with eyes like eclipses. Creatures shaped by fear itself. Not because she loved chaos, but because chaos was truth before order learned how to lie. A consort forged for war, and the heavens shook. The younger gods panicked. They had learned how to rule, but not how to face their mother. They searched for a weapon. They searched for a hero. They chose Marduk. Not because he was the oldest, not because he was the wisest, but because he promised control. Marduk did not face Tiamat as a son. He faced her as a system. He brought nets to trap the infinite winds, to suffocate the ocean. Words to define what should never have been named. And when he struck her down, creation didn't cheer, it split. From her body, the world was built. Her ribs became the sky. Her blood became the rivers. Her bones became the foundation of order. Civilization rose on a corpse, and all the gods called it victory. But listen closely. Chaos was never destroyed. It was never dissected. Tiamat did not vanish. She was repurposed. Every storm that ignores your prayers, every flood that erases borders, every moment where systems collapse under their own arrogance, that is her breath moving through the cracks. Tiamat is not a villain. She is the reminder that order is temporary, that control is borrowed, that creation always comes from something older, darker, and deeper than comfort allows. She is the mother civilization buried alive, and she is still dreaming. The gods fear chaos because it reminds them of what they were before they learned how to rule, that they were simply aspects of the universe, no greater or lesser than any other creation. The Vega Chorus, the hidden civilization of the Fae. There is a system in the northern sky that most humans mistake for simply a star. Vega. Bright, steady, harmless. But Vega is not a star alone. Vega is a civilization. And not the kind that builds empires. The kind that builds coherence. Long before the Aesir divided dominion, long before angels learned hierarchy, long before humans named gods praised upward, Vega was already synchronized. The Fae are not tribes. They are not rival courts. They are not scattered fantasy creatures fluttering in forests. They are one civilization, a distributed mind wearing different bodies. Individual excellence inside collective intelligence. They do not rule each other, they resonate. At the heart of Vega is something no empire understands. The chorus. Not a monarch, not a throne, not a god. The chorus is a shared cognitive field, a living psychic lattice. It stores memory, intent, invention, cultural law. Every Fae can access it, but not equally. To speak with one Fae is not to speak with an individual. You are speaking with a civilization through a particular mouthpiece. Privacy exists, secrecy exists, but deception barely does. When a Fae lies, the chorus vibrates. When a Fae fractures the whole, the field trembles. Dissent does not cause war, it causes desynchronization. And desynchronization is treated like a disease, not punished, healed, because coherence is survival. That is why Vega has never collapsed. It cannot fracture in the way empires fracture. It does not vote, it resonates. And from that resonance arise four great expressions of consciousness. Not species, expressions. The first are the elves, the aesthetic cortex of Vega. They decide how reality should feel. They shape ecosystems like musicians tune instruments. They sculpt genetics like artists shape marble. They control light, symmetry, emotional resonance. For them, beauty is not vanity, beauty is organization. A forest that is balanced is beautiful. A form that is efficient is beautiful. Ugliness is inefficiency. Inefficiency is danger. The elves design worlds that do not decay prematurely. They decide the elegance of probability. They do not ask whether something is pleasing, they ask whether it harmonizes. And if it does not harmonize, they redesign it. Where the elves determine how realities look, the dwarves determine what reality can survive. And this is structural cortex, reality engineers, star metal forgers. They understand the weight of physics the way others understand breath. Jewels in Vega are not decoration, they are memory. Crystal lattices store data, compression through structure. A dwarven city does not collapse because collapse is not permitted. They bend law without breaking it. They bind vaults that hold time steady. They forge metals that remember who touched them. They calculate load, tension, strain, not with numbers alone, but with harmonic awareness. If the elves are beauty, the dwarves are endurance. And then there are the gnomes, the cognitive cortex, the dangerous ones among them. Where others see doors, gnomes see coordinates. They were the first to understand that realms are not mystical mysteries. They are addressable locations. Portals are not open, they are called. A gnome does not ask, where do we go? They ask, what frequency are we dialing? Their portals operate on symbol, on intent, on harmonic mathematics, on narrative destiny. Every realm vibrates at a signature. Every world carries a pattern. To dial incorrectly is to not fail. It is to arrive somewhere you cannot survive. Humans imagine glowing arcs, spinning circles, ritual incantations. The gnomes use indexing systems, dimensional mathematics, resonant coordinates. They do not tear space, they pursue it. And that is why Vega is feared, not because it conquers, but because it understands access. No empire can dominate a civilization that cannot be divided. The Aesir built hierarchy, the Vega build coherence. Hierarchies require obedience, coherence requires alignment. You cannot bribe resonance, you cannot threaten harmony, you cannot infiltrate a mind that is already shared. That is why Vega has never needed armies. When an external force approaches, the chorus adjusts. Light shifts, probabilities bend, portals close. Not all by decree, but by synchronization. And yet, Vega is not perfect. Individual excellence still exists. The chorus amplifies brilliance, but it also magnifies deviation. When a Fae drifts too far away from harmonic law, the field hums. Correction begins. Not through exile, through recalibration. That is the subtle terror outsiders feel. That you are not confronting a ruler, you are confronting a civilization that cannot lie to itself. And now, the human problem. Humans are loud, emotionally erratic, narratively dense. We fracture easily, we divide quickly, we deceive others daily, and yet we are curious. When humans discover portal mathematics, when they uncover harmonic fragments, when they initiate symbols without understanding densities, they attempt to dial blindly. What frequency are we disturbing? And that is how civilizations collide, not through invasion, through curiosity without coherence. Vega does not seek Earth. It does not seek conquest. But if a door is dialed, if frequencies align, if narrative density breaches threshold, the chorus will answer. Not with war, but with evaluation. If Earth is dissonant, if humanity cannot harmonize, Vega will not destroy, it will simply refuse resonance. And a world without resonance collapses under its own fragmentation. Remember this, Fae are not fantasies, they are structure. They are synchronization. They are a civilization that does not fracture. And in the cosmos ruled by hierarchy and conquest, that may be the most dangerous power of all. When you look at the Vega in the night sky, you are not looking at a star. You are looking at coherence, listening, waiting for someone to dial correctly. Melina, the Inuit sun goddess who refused to be caught. Now, the Arctic is not empty. It only looks empty to people who've never had to survive in a world where the sky can erase you. Up here, silence is language. Wind is warning. And light is not decoration. Light is a verdict. Because in the far north, the sun doesn't simply rise. It returns, like something that had left on purpose, like someone who remembers why they ran. And her name, whispered through the ice, through stories, through generations, is Melina, the Inuit sun goddess, North America's burning eye. So picture this, A tundra horizon so wide it feels like the edge of the world. Snow drifts like plain dunes. Dark rock teeth jut from the land. And above it all, a sky that doesn't behave like other skies. A sky where the sun can refuse to set or disappear for weeks. A sky that makes time feel like an animal, restless, hungry, unpredictable. In that world, you don't worship the sun because it's pretty, you respect it because it decides if you live. And Melina is that decision. Melina, the woman who became daylight. Melina isn't portrayed as a distant glowing ball. She is a woman, a being with presence, with hair like night wind, with skin kissed by cold and sun alike, with eyes that carry the weight of the horizon. She wears the Arctic the way royalty wears a crown, not for fashion, but for survival. And around her, whether you imagine her in traditional adornments or in mythic cinematic armor made of hide, bone, and sunlight, there is always the same feeling. She is not gentle. She is not the soft warmth of spring morning. She is the harsh truth of daylight. The kind that exposes tracks in snow. The kind that reveals what someone tried to hide. The kind that turns secrets in the shadows that have nowhere to go. The beginning. Before the sky, there was a house. In one of the most famous Inuit tellings, Melina begins not in the heavens, but on earth. She lived with her brother. His name was Ananigan, often described as the moon. And in some versions, another sister exists too, a presence in the household, another point on the triangle of family and fate. But the core is always the same. Melina is there. Ananga is there. A home exists. And like many mythic homes, it is not safe because it has walls. Sometimes the first danger in a mythology is not the monster outside, it is the betrayal inside. The violation when trust breaks. There is a night, and the night is thick. No stars you can count, no lamp strong enough to banish what's about to happen. Melina's brother violates her, and in some telling, she comes into her darkness and does not know who until the truth is uncovered. And when the truth becomes clear, when the betrayal reveals its face, something fundamental snaps. Not just in Melina, in the world. Because in the Inuit myth, the cosmos isn't mechanical, it's emotional, a moral universe, a relationship universe. And when an act like that happens, the world does not shrug and move on. It transforms. The torch. Flight becomes fire. Melina does not stay. She takes a torch, a fire in hand, and she runs. Not into the woods, not into another village. She runs into the sky. And as she rises, her torch becomes brighter, hotter, purer, until it is no longer just a fire. It is the sun itself. And it is the first blazing refusal, the first celestial no. And behind her, a Ningen follows. He is frantic, hungry, ashamed, possessed by pursuit. He grabs his own flame, and his light becomes the moon, not as radiant, not as triumphant, a lesser fire, a chasing fire. The chase, why the sun and the moon move. Now the sky makes sense, not because science is wrong, but because the myth is describing something else. Not the physics of motion, but the meaning of motion. The sun and the moon cross the heavens, not as random objects, but as story. Melina runs ahead, unreachable, sovereign, burning. Anangan follows, always behind, never arriving. And in many tales, the moon grows thin, weak, diminished, because he forgets to eat. Because obsession is a kind of starvation. That is why the moon waxes and wanes. Sometimes he regains strength, sometimes he fades, but he never stops chasing. And Melina never stops moving, because the first rule of her myth is she will not be caught again. The Arctic miracle, when day doesn't end. And here's where the Inuit sky becomes legend, because in the far north, the sun can hang above the horizon for days, weeks, months, a long golden endurance, a daylight that refuses to die. This is not a cute fun fact. This is Melina's personality written across the atmosphere. When Melina decides to stay, she stays. When she leaves completely. And then she returns. You feel it in your bone. Because for the communities living in the Arctic, the returning sun is not just nice weather. It is a spiritual event. It is cosmic reunion. A promise that the world hasn't abandoned you. Melina's power. Light as witness. But here's the thing most people miss about Melina. Her power isn't just heat. It's exposure. Light reveals. Light tracks movement. Light turns footprints into evidence. Light makes the hunter visible. Light makes the hunted see the land. Melina becomes the witness of the sky. And here's the harsh truth to that. Because of her story, the sun isn't a smiling mother. It's a survivor. A living boundary. A force that says, I will not disappear for your comfort. I will not soften the truth. I will shine until you can't pretend anymore. The cosmic archetype. The solar feminine who escapes. A lot of cultures imagine the sun as male, a king, a warrior, a father, a creator seated on a throne of fire. But Melina is a different archetype. She is the solar feminine as escape and sovereignty. She is the feminine divinity not defined by who she belongs to, but who she refuses. She is a goddess who doesn't negotiate with violation. She doesn't argue, she doesn't plead, she moves. And in moving, she becomes untouchable. In moving, she becomes the sky's dominant rhythm. Now, imagine Melina as she would appear in the cinematic myth. She walks across a bridge of snow and ice. Behind her, the sun blooms like a halo, too bright to stare at. Wind pulls her hair like black smoke. Her silhouette is sharp against the gold. She doesn't smile as a friendly deity, but she moves forward, always forward. Each step is a reminder that this is a goddess not begging for worship. This is a goddess whose existence is proof of survival. So when the sun stretches over the Arctic, when it refuses to set, when it stares down at the frozen land like an unblinking eye, remember this. It is not just daytime. It is Melina, still running, still sovereign, still refusing to be caught. And in the world where people have tried to rewrite what happened, erase what happened, hide what happened, Melina becomes something sacred, a light that will not let the story disappear, because her myth teaches a hard truth carved in the sky. Sometimes the only way to survive is to become untouchable. Sometimes the only way forward is to turn your escape into a new cosmos. And the sun is not always kindness. Sometimes the sun is a woman with a torch and a vow. Goddess who did not accept drought. In the late Bronze Age city of Ugarit, along the coast of what is now Syria, clay tablets are pressed with cuneiform signs that preserve one of the oldest storm myths in recorded history. Among those tablets was the story of Baal, the storm god. And within that story stands a figure who does not wait quietly for events to unfold. Her name is Anet. Now, Baal was not merely a god of thunder in this narrative. He represents rain, fertility, agricultural survival. In a region dependent on seasonal storms, Baal's vitality determines whether crops grow or fail. When Baal rises, the land flourishes. When Baal falls, droughts threaten everything. The Baal cycle describes a cosmic conflict. Baal clashes with Yam, the sea. Later, he confronts Mot, the god of death and sterility. These are not abstract enemies. Yam represents chaotic waters. Mot represents drought, dryness, the swallowing stiffness of death. And at one point in the narrative, Baal is defeated. Now, the text becomes fragmentary, but the message is clear. The storm god disappears. The rains cease. the agricultural cycle halts. And for a Bronze Age society, this is not symbolic drama. This is catastrophe. And this is where Anat enters with force. Anat is often described as Baal's sister. In some traditions, she is also his ally or consort. But the text makes one thing unmistakable. She is not subordinate. She is fierce, independent, emotionally intense. When Baal falls, Anat does not collapse into mourning. She reacts. The Ugaritic texts describe her rage in striking terms. She seeks out those who are responsible. She seizes enemies. She attacks without hesitation. The language is violent. She grabs warriors. She splits them. She scatters bodies. One passage describes her wading knee-deep in blood. Another describes her rejoicing in slaughter. This detail is uncomfortable for modern ears, but it tells us something important. In this world, violence carried out in defense of cosmic order is not shameful. It's necessary. Anat does not hesitate because hesitation would mean drought continues. She does not negotiate because negotiation does not bring rain. And myth does not portray her as irrational. It portrays her as decisive. The slaughter imagery is vivid, almost ritualistic. The battlefield becomes a space of sacred correction. Blood is not randomly cruel, it's restoration through force, through tribal theology. Anat's loyalty to Baal is absolute. When he is threatened, she becomes the weapon. But her most significant confrontation is not merely with human entities, is not merely with human enemies. It is with Mot. Mot is not simply a rival deity. Mot represents death itself, sterility, dry earth, the swallowing void that ends growth. So when Baal descends into the realm of Mot, drought grips the land. Anat searches for him. Now, the texts describe her journey into grief, but grief does not paralyze her. She confronts Mot directly. The fragment suggests imagery once again. Anat seizes Mot. She cuts him. She burns him. In some reconstructions, she grinds him and scatters him like grain. Even if the exact sequence varies due to damaged tablets, the symbolic pattern is unmistakable. She does not reason with death. She dismantles it. This is not a goddess of comfort. This is a goddess of intervention. The violence serves a purpose. Eventually, Baal returns. The storm resumes and rain falls. Thus, fertility is restored. Without Anat's ferocity, that restoration does not occur. Now, in the structure of myth, Baal may be the storm, but Anat is the enforcer of its return. She is not ornamental to the story. She is essential to the resolution. Now, archaeologically, her presence is not confined to myth alone. Inscriptions and cultic materials found in Ugarit confirms that she was actively worshipped. Kemetic or Egyptian texts mention her name, indicating a cross-cultural recognition. Later inscriptions referencing Anat Yahu suggest that her memory survived into adapted forms even beyond the collapse of Ugarit. But the Baal cycle remains her clearest portrayal. In that portrait, Anat is not the nurturing mother archetype familiar in many myth systems. She is tribal protector. She is the embodiment of loyalty carried to its extreme. Her joy in battle is not random cruelty. It reflects a worldview in which survival is fragile and threats are constant. The late Bronze Age Levant was not a stable world. City-states rose and fell. Agricultural cycles could fall. Warfare was common, and political alliances shifted. A society in that environment does not imagine divinity as passive. It imagines divinity as fiercely protective. Anat does not apologize for violence. She sanctifies it when it preserves order. This is a crucial distinction. Her brutality is not chaos. It's simply boundary enforcement. She defends Baal. She defends fertility. She defends continuity. And in that way, Anat represents a specific kind of sacred feminine power. Not romantic love, not cosmic abstraction, but embodied physical defense. Her myth forces uncomfortable questions. Can violence actually be sacred? Can destruction be restorative? Is loyalty more important than mercy in unstable societies? Now, from the authors of the Baal cycle, the answer appears to be yes. Anat's blood-soaked battlefield is not a moral failure. It is divine necessity. And that necessity restores the storm. When Baal rises again, the land breathes. Rain falls, crops grow, life resumes. The cycle continues. Anat does not claim the throne. She does not demand worship in the text climax. She recedes once balance is restored. The restraint is telling. She is not driven by conquest. She is driven by defense. Her violence has purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, she stands down. In comparative mythology, Anat stands apart because of the clarity of her ferocity. She is not softened. She is not reinterpreted as gentle. The tablets preserve her intense, unapologetic, and loyal. That preservation gives us a rare insight into the psychology of ancient culture. In a fragile world, survival is sacred. In a fragile world, protection may require force. Anat embodies the logic without hesitation. She is not storm, she is not fire. She is blade and blood in defense of continuity. In the Baal cycle, drought threatens civilization. Anat refuses to let drought win. And in that refusal, she becomes one of the most striking examples of the fierce, protective, feminine in ancient Near East. She is the goddess who did not accept death as final. She is the one who confronted drought with steel. She is Anat. Angrboda, the grief bringer. In Norse cosmology, the end of the gods has a mother, and her name is Angrboda. She does not rule a hall in Asgard. She does not sit among the Aesir. She doesn't even shout across battlefields. She simply stands in Ironwood, and from her comes Ragnarok. In Jotunheim, far from the ordered halls of Asgard, stood a region known as Ironwood, a place of shadow, prophecy, and old power. There lived Angrboda, a Jotun, not a goddess of Asgard, not a servant, not subordinate, but a being of primordial force. Her name means she who brings grief. And in Norse myth, names are not simply decorative. They are destiny. She is not introduced with fanfare, no feast hall, no divine spotlight. She exists in the margins. And the margins is where fate is born. The union of chaos. Into Ironwood comes Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the fracture in divine order. What happens between Loki and Angrboda is not a romance mythology. This is alignment. This is chaos meeting inevitability. From this first union are born three beings who would define the end of the gods. Fenrir, the wolf who would devour Odin. Jormungandr, the serpent who will poison the skies battling Thor. And Hel, the sovereign of the dishonored dead. Now understand the weight of this. From her, she births the end of Odin, the death of Thor, and the ruler of the underworld. This is not coincidence. This is structural myth design. The mother of Ragnarok. The gods discover these children, and they panic. Fenrir is chained. Gormagad is cast into the sea. Hel is sent to rule the dead. The Aesir try to contain the future, but Angrboda, she is not slain, she's not in prison, she's not even punished. She remains in Ironwood, just watching. There is something chilling about that. The father is bound in chains after his crime. The children are exiled, but the mother, untouched. Because she represents something older than the Aesir. She is not rebellion, She is consequence. The shadow feminine. Angrboda does not swing a hammer like Thor. She does not sit on a throne like Odin, and she does not boast like Freya, but she births inevitability. In mythic structure, she represents the womb of catastrophe, the feminine aspect of fate, the quiet architect of endings, and the shadow mother archetype. She is the inversion of the nurturing goddess, not because she is evil, but because she gives birth to what must happen. In Norse cosmology, even the gods cannot escape fate, and Angrboda is one of fate's instruments. Why she matters. Without Angrboda, there is no Fenrir. There is no world serpent. There is no hell. There is no Ragnarok as we know it. She does not dominate the text, but she dominates the outcome. And that's the myth at its sharpest. The loudest characters are rarely the most powerful. Sometimes the one who stands in the forest is the one who changes the mythic world. Irzuli Danto, the scarred mother, the fire, the protector. There is a goddess who does not smile softly. There is a goddess who does not ask for admiration. She stands scarred. She stands armed. She stands holding a child in one arm and a blade in the other. This is Irzuli Danto. She is not delicate romance. She is not silk and perfume. She is love forged in violence. She is the petrol fire of Haitian voodoo. And where she lives in cosmology. Now, in Haitian voodoo, there is a distant creator, Bondi. Bondi does not interfere directly in daily life. Instead, humans interact with Iwe, the spirits. The Iwe are not gods in the Western Greek Olympian sense. These are forces, personalities, ancestral intelligences, archetypal energies. And among the Iwe, there are two major energetic currents. Rada, which is cool, ancestral, and stabilizing, and Petro, which is hot, reactive, revolutionary. Irzuli Danto belongs to the Petro current. Petro is fire. Petro is gunpowder. Petro is a spirit that rises when oppression becomes unbearable. Petro Iwe are not calm river spirits. They are storm systems. Danto is one of the most fierce among them. And she is not Erzuli Frida. And this is a critical point. There is another Erzuli, and that is Erzuli Frida. Now, Frida is luxury. Frida wears lace. Frida longs for romance, for perfume, for admiration. Frida is the dream of European refinement layered over Afro-Caribbean devotion.